Good evening, board members. That's right. Tonight we welcome two students from Fremont who will lead the pledge, Madden and Jaden Lambo. Would you please come forward? Madden and Jaden are brothers. Madden is a fifth grader who is a high achiever. His academic strengths are in math and reading, and he's a gifted creative writer. Madden is a member of the Fremont Avant-Garde, a traveling performing team, as well as the Good News Club. He will attend the Scholars Program at Central next year. Jaden is a fourth grader who excels at anything he puts his mind to. According to his teacher, Jaden loves math and solving problems and enjoys the learning and inquiry involved in science. He is a member of the Fremont math team, the Fremont Dribblers performing team, and he is active after school in the Good News Club. Jaden always wants to do his best and never settles for average. If you are here to support Madden and Jaden tonight, would you please stand so we may recognize you? And now, for those who are able, please stand and join us as our students lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And Madden and Jaden, whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now continue with honoring excellence for this evening by recognizing an outstanding young philanthropist. To begin our recognitions tonight, I would introduce Bennett Potter, a fourth grader at Field Elementary School. Bennett, would you come forward? Bennett was recently named the 2023 Outstanding Youth Philanthropist by the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Ozarks Region. The award goes to an individual under the age of 18 who has made a significant difference in their community through their volunteer efforts. The individual who nominated Bennett said this: "Bennett is a giver, and his heart for others is inspiring. He has used his birthday to raise not only awareness, but also dollars for area nonprofits. Countless community organizations have benefited from his generous heart with Amazon Smile fundraisers and birthday parties that collect items for community causes. Bennett also gives time, bringing an extra element of fun to whatever he is part of. He supported Lost and Found Grief Center by assisting with the Run and Remember event, which honors loved ones who have died. Please join me in thanking Bennett for his work and congratulating him on this well-deserved honor." And Dr. Bagwell, his principal, is here as well. Can you come forward?
It was dressed as a snowman day.
Do you want to say anything about that? You're welcome to. We had planned this evening for another recognition highlighting a state golf champion who is a member of the Glendale girls golf team. Unfortunately, due to illness, we will need to reschedule that celebration for our January meeting. So more to come on that state recognition. Tonight, we'll also celebrate our most valuable player for the month of December. In celebration of our SPS United theme, we're pleased to honor the December most valuable player. This recognition reminds us that teamwork and a collective vision positively impact SPS students and staff. Tonight's MVP supports our youngest learners at Harrison Elementary School. Not only does she work hard to ensure our students are success ready to start kindergarten, her collaborative spirit benefits the entire early childhood team at Harrison. Let's watch this video to learn more about December's MVP, Leslie Schallenberger.
My name is Leslie Schallenberger. I teach Wonder Years Preschool at David Harrison Elementary. I have been thrilled to be a part of Wonder Years Preschool because I think it's a great curriculum for preschoolers to grow and learn and be kindergarten ready. I moved from kindergarten to preschool because I wanted to be a part of the beginning learners and their experience at school, and I love the excitement that they bring and wanted to share in that enthusiasm of starting school for the first time.
Her wealth of expertise in early childhood literacy impacts her team. She's always willing to go above and beyond to share with her teammates and with her colleagues. She brings joy, she brings passion, she brings belief that every student can and will be successful, and success-ready students begin in pre-K.
The other day we were working with our letters, and I had a student for the very first time make his letter A, and that's a tricky letter to write, and he just exploded out of his chair with excitement. So we danced and we celebrated the letter A all morning long.
In an early childhood classroom, it's really important for us to have students ready for kindergarten and ensure that they're success-ready students for not just kindergarten but beyond. And I think Leslie captures that by providing that ability to shift into some independent child-directed learning, which is found in her classroom throughout the day.
She is genuinely one of the kindest, most willing to chip in, pitch in, help out wherever she can. She models Husky pride every single day.
I think it is super important for preschool friends to come to school and know that they are safe and loved here. And once you put that foundation in place, we can start building on the academic and social emotional needs of that student. And I'm thrilled that I get to be in on the very beginning of that process for them.
Congratulations, Leslie, and thank you so much for all you do for Team SPS. Would you like to share a few words?
I would. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for this honor. There are so many deserving people, and I have the privilege of working with two staffs that deserve this award. Christy Davis and the Wonder Years team are just amazing. I have learned and grown so much from the expertise of the early childhood department that they have. And the icing on the cake is that I get to do my job at Harrison Elementary, where Sean and the staff there are truly exceptional. And I appreciate everyone, and they are deserving of this too. But thank you so very much. Thank you.
And that concludes Honoring Excellence for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Moving on to item 2.04, approval of the agenda. The recommended action is that the board approve the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion? Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second? Second from Board Member Muhammad Khani. At this time, we will vote. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to item 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 3.01, public comments. The Board of Education welcomes comments about the issues being discussed. The board uses this time in our meeting to listen to the public, but will not comment or engage with the public during this meeting. The board allows for up to 10 speakers per public comment period. The board chair will call on individuals in the order in which they signed up. Substitutions are not permitted. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and will be timed by the board secretary. Comments must be acceptable for a business and family-friendly environment. Inappropriate language, gestures, or personal attacks will not be tolerated. It is inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, these concerns should be addressed through appropriate administrative supervisors, either in the schools or the district office. If you have materials that you'd like to share, please place them in the tray on the podium, and they will be distributed to board members following the meeting. Our first public comment speaker this evening is Joanna Brockwell.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Brockwell, and I am the principal at Watkins Elementary. This is my 22nd year with Springfield Public Schools. I'm representing SAESP, the Springfield Association of Elementary School Principals, as I am currently serving as president. The purpose of SAESP is to bring unity among the principals of SPS, as well as to foster a professional learning network through state, local, and national associations. On behalf of the elementary principals, I would first like to say thank you. Thank you for the times you've listened. Thank you for the times you visited our buildings and asked questions. Thank you for the times that you've supported public education. Anyone in the education field should be recognized and appreciated. These are unprecedented times. We are experiencing public education like it's never been experienced before. Those of us in leadership absolutely recognize this and believe that we have been called for such a time as this. We step onto our campuses each day, unsure of what might unfold, but believing that if not us, then who? In our strategic plan, Objective 1.3 states, maintain a positive classroom environment conducive to teaching and learning. Are we encountering students with different and greater needs than ever before? Yes. And we are committed to the work that is required. We have received training and resources. We are examining discipline data, and we are implementing and maintaining consistency in regards to positive behavior strategies, as well as the code of conduct. When assigning discipline, we are in compliance with the handbook when it states administrators should assign the lowest level of intervention first. We take into consideration the student's age, health, disability, decision-making ability, and prior discipline history. We consider the student's willingness to repair the harm, the seriousness of the act, any injuries, the extent of disruption to the learning environment, whether the act was intentional, prior trauma, language proficiency, and knowledge of school behaviors. We ensure consequences applied will minimize the amount of instructional time lost. We are in agreement with the handbook statement that discipline is used to teach and guide students how to recognize and manage emotions, demonstrate care and concern for others, develop positive relationships, make good decisions, and behave ethically and respectfully and responsibly. We set this standard for our students, and we as the district must adhere to it as well. Albert Einstein once said, setting an example is not the main means of influencing others, it's the only means. We are very much aware of the narrative that exists. We are navigating extraordinary academic and behavioral circumstances and believe that a continued partnership with our stakeholders is the way that we will make positive change and move the needle. So here's the call to action. Resist the urge to fight and tear one another down. Listen, ask questions, respond when necessary. The success of all students depends on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Our next public speaker is Beth Bales.
Hi, my name is Beth Bales. I'm a first grade teacher at Robertson Community School, and I'm here on behalf of our staff, our families, but most of all our students. Robertson is, as you know, being looked at as possibly to be closed, and I'm here to try to encourage you to give that more thought. In 3 minutes, I can't adequately express to you what Robertson is or what it means to our community. And I say our community because I live 20 minutes away from there, but Robertson is my community and they are my people. We become part of that community, and in working in correlation with those community, the parents and grandparents who are raising children, we become this big family unit together. It is the only community school in Springfield. The model has been in place for several years. I'm thinking about 20. And the model for that school is such that it is really needed. Our kids are unique. They come from a variety of backgrounds. Many of our kids have been exposed to violence, drug use. We hear sirens all the time. We've had 2 murders within half a mile of our school within the past year and a half. Our kids need something different, and I believe that we offer that for them. We have many kids who transfer. Parents transfer their kids to our school. There's a parent here tonight. They bring their children back to Robertson even though they moved because their kids need Robertson and what we offer. We may not always be traditional, but we offer an excellent education. And we have students that have been sent to us because they don't fit anywhere else. Their behavior warrants something different. They can't learn. They've been told no. And what happens with us is we get in there and we get our hands dirty and we get on the floor with them if we need to. Whatever is needed, we offer that to those kids so that the nose turns into, yes, I can, watch me. And that's what happens. We deal with all the crumminess in their lives. And in those little lives, you're talking kindergarten to 5th grade, their little lives, the things they've been exposed to, nothing that I've been exposed to. And they need us. They need a different way. I want to tell you quickly about a couple of kids. One is a little boy in my classroom, and at the beginning of the year, he was just very quiet, very reserved, and he struggled with learning. And I am a very loving, giving person. That's who I'm outside of school. He started connecting with me.
Beth, I hate to cut you off, but I have to be fair to all speakers, so I apologize.
Can I just say this? Please think before you make a decision to close our school.
Thank you, Beth.
It's needed.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Brandy Van Antwerp.
Good evening. I'm Brandy Van Antwerp. It's good to see you all this evening. I've been a Pershing Elementary mom for 10 years, and I've had 4 different kids attend our school. I'm asking on behalf of Pershing Elementary PTA that the board consider the following when making your decision. Our school is magical, thanks to our incredible teachers. Among 7 classrooms and 7 teachers, we've had a cumulative 53 years teaching in our building. An average of 7.5 years for our teachers at Pershing, and the longest teacher tenure at Pershing is 12 years. It's only 7 teachers and only 152 kids, but these 159 individuals are people who will experience the impact of this closure. If we budgeted to remodel Pershing as a K-8, then we would ask that we would consider keeping it on that path and remodeling it as a K-8. Our discipline is the 2nd lowest in the district. We have a wait list for people wanting to attend our elementary. 55% of students, grades 1 through 5, have been at our school since kindergarten. Our homes in the neighborhood that feed into Pershing Elementary are older. Demographically, a lot of folks are aging out and selling their homes right now in the Southern Hills community. And we know that we'll have more that will need to go to school. And the closure of a school in that area, at least to us, doesn't quite make sense. So we ask that you'd consider that. Transitioning from elementary to middle school can be a difficult transition, and we think that's eased for our Pershing students who have the opportunity to attend a K-8 building, like my Leo here, who's in 4th grade and will go to Pershing Middle School as well. It also allows for 9 years of relationships with teachers all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade. It allows them to interact with their elementary teachers even in middle school. It allows them to volunteer in those classrooms, to get their National Junior Honor Society hours in their own building by supporting their younger classmates. Our preference is that you would not close Pershing Elementary. If it's necessary, though, and all data provided is not sufficient in keeping it open, we would ask that our students would not get moved to Pittman Elementary across Sunshine. Currently, 26% of our students walk to school. 54.6% are on free and reduced lunches. And we understand that with our families, it's a barrier sometimes for them to get their students to school, and walking is necessary. If they were moved to Pittman Elementary, they would have to walk across Sunshine in order to get to their school. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brandy. Our next speaker is Jeff Houghton.
Hi. I'm also here to talk about Pershing Elementary. I have two sons that go there and a one-year-old daughter who we hope will go there as well. We moved into the area several years ago, and we thought, I don't know about this school, just basing it off of the building, really. And Pershing Elementary can kind of be an afterthought in terms of people passing by. But what we found was that it's this very special place. And a lot of my son's friends have moved in because they want to be there. And what the teachers in particular have created there is pretty remarkable. And I'd also like to echo what Brandy said, that what we see on the ground as far as living in the neighborhood is older folks moving on and younger families moving in. And the thought I just keep coming back to is, what is the value of a neighborhood school? I see it all the time in our kids walk home from school, and because their baby sister is napping, I see grandparents walking their kids to school. At events, we see people over and over the years, and that we also see in the neighborhood. I host every year I host the Pershing's Got Talent show at the elementary school. It's my favorite thing in the world, and I tell my wife as we sit there that we are in our children's childhood memories right now. And I hope that you guys will think about that this school is special, and there is value in neighborhood schools and what they bring. And I know you guys have tough decisions. I appreciate you all volunteering your time, but I hope you will consider keeping Pershing around, both for us and for families in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next speaker is Lisa, and I'm not even going to attempt your last name. Would you mind pronouncing it for me?
Yes, my name is Lisa Schulteis.
Thank you.
Members of the board, I come to you this evening urging you to keep Pershing a K-8 school. Please table this issue and take additional time to research before making such an important decision. Once Pershing Elementary is gone, it's gone. We're putting a lot of faith into a study that says these schools will have room to accommodate Pershing students. Enrollment forecasts from a similar district study in 2016 were inaccurate, largely due to COVID. But what if these forecasts are inaccurate too? There are only 3 to 4 schools nearby that we could send our kids to, and they are already nearing capacity. As others mentioned, it also doesn't take into consideration the aging population of Southern Hills. At least 63 homes within the Pershing K-5 boundaries alone have not been on the market in over 30 years. As these homes become available, I know young couples and families will move into the neighborhood like we did in 2014. We specifically looked for a home within Pershing's boundaries because it was a K-8 school. The study is also using resident student populations instead of actual enrollment numbers, which would make the schools well over capacity. As a member of the 2022 task force pointed out, square footage versus lived experience are not the same when it comes to utilization rate. None of the schools have the space to add extra classrooms. The plan isn't feasible. The final report from the task force states, and I quote, that additions would likely be required at other elementary schools to account for the change of students if Pershing were to change to a middle school only. Pershing's current site has the space for a larger K-8 school, Let's do it right the first time. As history shows, it's rather difficult to renovate and add on to buildings around here. My children have attended either Pershing Elementary or Middle School for the past 9 years. There is magic at Pershing, and until you've experienced it, it's hard to describe. Many of the staff have taught the entire 9 years we've been at Pershing. They are a family, and they are tight. The teachers know all of the students, not just in the ones in their own classrooms. They look out for each other. Many elementary students that have gone on to the middle school search out their former teachers at every opportunity to say hello. I know that if my child needed something in middle school, every single one of those elementary teachers would have her back. And it's for these reasons that I will always advocate for Pershing. The K-8 experience is special. Please do not close our neighborhood elementary school. Please don't destroy our Pershing family. Keep Pershing a K-8 school. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next speaker is Mary Byrne.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Mary Byrne. Some of you may be aware that in the past 11 years, I've been providing information and testimony at legislative hearings in Jefferson City. As such, I was keenly interested in the Springfield Public School Board's 2024 legislative platform. Therefore, I've been looking for it. I noted on the December 18 agenda, when I opened it up early Monday morning, that the 2024 legislative platform was placed on the agenda for tonight's public meeting. I was interested in reviewing that item, attachment, regarding the platform to determine whether it addressed legislation about an important issue I've been following at the state level. When I called SPS administration at 8:00 a.m. to register as a speaker for public comments, I had the board agenda open on my computer at the time of my call and commented to the person taking my request that when I opened the item, the text describing it said that there was an attachment. But in fact, there was no attachment available for public view. Instead, a symbol indicated the presence of an attachment. When I asked about this, the person responded that there was an attachment, but it was unavailable to the public until after the board voted on it in executive session. Then the item would be updated. This morning I opened the board agenda at 7:30 a.m. and saw the item was removed from tonight's public meeting and remaining items were renumbered rather than remain intact, showing the item was struck from the public agenda. Because the board will not respond to questions during public comment, I can only speculate on the reason for changing to tonight's agenda. I determined it was highly unlikely a vote on the platform was postponed until the next scheduled board meeting, given tonight's meeting is the last scheduled meeting before the onset of the 2024 legislative session. The next meeting of the board is January 16. The legislative session begins January 3rd. If the absence of an approved legislative platform before the legislative session begins would handicap the work of the SPS lobbyists by approximately 2 weeks. That is, if the powers and duties of the board were respected. I have grave concerns about the agenda for this meeting for several reasons. First, the embargo on the proposed platform from public view before the board votes to approve it is a violation of Missouri Sunshine Law, a law instituted to ensure transparency of government bodies in Missouri and put a check on the temptation of small numbers of officials to impose their will on the people by working in secret to suppress opposition. Transparency is achieved by the legislature mandating that public government bodies in the state, including school boards, to make public record available for public review and to conduct official business regarding all matters concerning the public in open public
Mary,
meetings.
thank you. Your time has elapsed. Our next speaker is Vicki Porter McGowan.
Good evening. My name is Vicki Porter McGowan. I'm a retired Houston Independent School District, Houston, Texas math science teacher, and I hold a master's degree. I taught from 1988 to 2011, retired, and was called back as an intervention teacher from 2012 to 2017 for students who were at risk of failing the state math exam. I have a granddaughter in the 6th grade at Wilsons Creek Intermediate School. I work with my granddaughter most weekends on Desmos math assignments. These assignments are extremely difficult and take an hour or more to complete. She does not know where to begin, and thus working independently is impossible. Chromebooks are not supposed to go home, but in order to stay current, my granddaughter is allowed to check one out. I believe she has it with her most days and weekends. There are no skills practice problems with Desmos. It is entirely based on word problems. Word problems should not be given until there is at least basic understanding of the material, and then word problems need to be led by an instructor before jumping into a computer-led program. There is no way to ask questions or get instructions from this program. There's no evidence that an instructor has given skills lessons prior to a student being required to complete these problems. I've had to review each assignment to figure out what and how to get correct answers, and even then, there have been some questions that have been marked incorrect after following the format shown. Just once was there a study guide given, but it did not come until the end of the chapter assignments. The study guide gave guidance on how to complete the assignments, which did no good after those assignments were already worked. In order to master and retain skills, one must practice them after teacher-led instruction is given. Reteaching needs to be done by the instructor when said instructor sees that comprehension has not been gained. Retention and mastery are the most important elements to math success. A return to learning skills by doing calculations with paper and pencil, assessment by the teacher on comprehension on all necessary steps, and continuity of curriculum is essential for mastery and retention by the students. Desmos does not provide for any of these steps to take place. It is one of the worst programs I have ever encountered, as none of these skills can be assessed, and thus the students are easily lost and confused by the assignments. I have seen little to no value added to my granddaughter's math skills. What I have seen is lack of teaching by the teachers towards these assignments, and it's easy for them to have graded assignments done for them instead of grading them themselves and assessing where their students are. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Our next speaker is Roy Holland. Roy Holland.
Good evening. My name is Roy Holland. I'm a retired physician, former legislator. Last time we had demographics, the chief of police was here and he said, you want to kill a neighborhood, close the school. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm out to protest on behalf of classroom teachers. We're all frustrated what's going on in the classrooms. We respect our teachers greatly. They do a fine job. How can we do better? Our society is certainly changing. In recent decades, families are broken still, lots of divorce. Now people live together and they have children. In our area, 35% of the children are born of unmarried parents, up to 50% in metro areas. And who raises those children? Oftentimes they're disruptive, and the rest of the class has to suffer. But there's something in our recent COVID experience that we might look back and say, hey, can we learn something from that? And I say yes. We took the sick kids out of classes. They were removed, and the healthy kids could go on. The sick kids were educated at home, online, or in launch, so they could keep up. They had a chance. They were connected. So it makes sense to look at a model like that we've been through before, if we're looking at having to remove disruptive kids from class, whether they're sick or whether they're disruptive. So that when you remove them, then the remaining students can go on and the teacher can continue. So the kids who are taken out, they need psychosocial evaluations, they need physical exams, and they need checks on things like reading. Many times they're behind. And so then they could go back to class. This could be done at an alternative site, at home, or on launch again. And so this board is very busy, and they've used task forces in the past. I suggest you consider a task force for looking at what to do with the classrooms and how to get control of them, and respect for the teachers. We have lots of things to talk about: dress codes, suspensions, and harassment, and I think this is a good proposal, and I'll volunteer to be on the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Our next speaker is Emily Seffler.
Good evening. I'm Emily Fessler with the League. The League of Women Voters of Southwest Missouri has been a longstanding supporter of Springfield Public Schools, as we value high-quality education that will inform students today who are our leaders for tomorrow. Similar to the Board of Education, the League is nonpartisan. We are fortunate to work with elected and public officials in much of the work we do. We value the board as nonpartisan and that each member was elected on nonpartisan principles. However, the League's Observer Corps has been disheartened to see public officials bringing personal bias into board and district issues that may breach values, ethics, and codes set forth for you as elected officials. You are seen in the community as a board member first, and that authority cannot be dismissed. What you say within private spheres is your own, but as soon as you step into the public sphere, whether you are acting in official district business or not, you are tied to your public position and the responsibilities therein. In 2010, citizens of Springfield called for greater civility in public discourse, which led to the development of the Springfield Greene County Civility Project by the Good Community Committee. They established the 10 tenets of civility, which many entities in Springfield have adopted, including private businesses, public agencies, the Greene County Commissioners, and city councils. These tenets are woven into our League's policies and practices. We strongly encourage the Board of Education to become familiar with these 10 tenets and to work to establish a culture of civil discourse. Civil discourse demands that there be an open, engaged discussion. Nobody has to win or lose. Discourse is not a contest. Instead, the goal of discourse is to gain new perspectives and understanding of a particular issue. It can sometimes be much easier to ignore and stigmatize those who you do not agree with. Civil discourse provides a chance for people to work together towards something greater. We are all here because we passionately care for the education of students within the district. We can all agree that our end goal is to educate, inform, and empower students who will one day be making decisions about our community and district. To this end, we encourage you, as board members, as representatives, and decision makers of our districts, we look towards consensus building through civil discourse. We urge you to focus on the issues, have an open mind, and know when to walk away from discourse that is not constructive. By taking the time to listen to different perspectives and views, the board can establish a common goal and create a clear path of action that creates equitable, safe, and supportive learning environments for students and faculty. To this end, the League asks for the board's commitment to set aside personal stances, embrace the community's 10 tenets of civility, and build consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Our final speaker this evening is Sherry Buchanan.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Sherry Buchanan. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Southwest Missouri. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that advocates for issues we believe are in the best interest of our democracy. We share your commitment to quality public education and thank you for your service. Representatives of the League have previously spoken at these meetings and sent letters urging you to adopt a resolution of support for LGBTQ+ students and staff. We are concerned about the board's reluctance to adopt such a resolution or to amend the district's non-discrimination policy, recognizing that sex and gender are discrete. We have recently witnessed your discussions regarding the USDA non-discrimination guidelines that include gender identity and sexual orientation, and are dismayed by your inability to reach unanimity on this consequential guideline. The League's national policies state that in order to have an informed citizenry and protect our democracy, every citizen should have access to free public education that provides equal opportunity for all. We believe that equal opportunity can only be provided in physically and psychologically safe environments, including protections for sexual orientation and gender identity. Our policies also state that in public education, no person or group should suffer legal, economic, or administrative discrimination. We fear that your failure to adopt non-discrimination policies that include gender identity and sexual orientation language, or even to endorse a statement of support for LGBTQ+ students and staff, is a form of administrative discrimination that you should re-examine. We recognize that human sexuality is a complex issue. We respect that individuals have varying levels of knowledge and comfort with these topics. Regardless of your personal stances, however, we hold you as board members to a standard of providing the public with accurate information. Misinformation about gender identity and sexual orientation has been spread at board meetings and in other venues. We believe that you speak with the authority of your elected offices when making public comments, and that you carry a responsibility to reject misinformation. A misuse of this authority by spreading misinformation, whether intentional or inadvertent, is unacceptable for public officials. We're leaving with you resources that the League members use to help avoid misinformation and disinformation, and resources about gender identity and sexual orientation that League members have found useful. Thank you for this consideration.
Thank you, Sherry. That concludes our public comment portion of the meeting. Moving on to item 4.01 through 6.01, consent agenda. The recommended action is that the board approve consent agenda items 4.01 through 6.01. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second? Second from Board Member Bruner. This time we will vote.
I wanted to make a comment
Sure.
about that, about one of the items on this consent agenda, so 5.01, KCOB, right? Is that, I'm sorry, we were wrapping up so fast. I wanted to make sure that I'm on the right spot.
You are correct, yes.
Okay. I'd sent an email regarding one of the items, loving guidance. So I just want to make a quick comment referencing that item. Loving guidance was the response that we got was specifically a training session regarding conscious discipline. So I wanted to point out, as I'm sure we're all aware, since the last meeting, a statement made by the president of the local the SNEA gained a lot of traction, and I wanted to read one little piece of that statement as it pertains to discipline and conscious discipline. PBIS, conscious discipline, and other trauma-informed practices being implemented were never developed with the intention to lower expectations of students, nor were they meant to replace consequences. Yet this is exactly what SPS seems to have done. I just wanted to point out that statement because I think it's valid, and I think it was kind of the theme of what she was trying to say, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that. I don't think that our board-issued statements acknowledged that, and I think that that was really the intent of what she was trying to convey, is that these processes are not meant to replace consequences. So as I will vote for consent agenda and this item on consent agenda, I have no issue with us doing training sessions on conscious discipline, but I did want to point out that these things, as she said, are not meant to replace consequences. The response that I got by email explained that this training session let's see. And foundational components for creating calming and recovery environment to supplement or replace in-school suspension was the comment that I received as it related to the description provided for that training session. But the language in KCOB here actually says calming and recovery environment to supplement ISS. It deleted this concept of to supplement or replace ISS. So this program, Conscious Discipline, by their own words, says that this training session was to potentially replace ISS with this CARE, this calming and recovery environment, a place to calm and recovery. So I took that as part of this training session. Its intent is to essentially replace consequences. ISS, I deem as consequences. CARE, or calming and recovery environment, to me are the more the conscious discipline side of it. So I just wanted to make this statement and point out the validity of that comment, and I will go ahead and vote for this because I have no problem with conscious discipline. I just want to reiterate that those things cannot replace consequences.
Can I make a statement also?
We actually have 3 principals in the audience that can actually dispute that conscious discipline is not used to replace consequences or discipline. I know we have our Roundtree principal here. They implement conscious discipline. I believe Watkins is here, and I saw 2. So I don't know if Misty, if you would come up and explain. Oh, and I see Bethany back there. Could you please explain how that conscious discipline doesn't take away from consequences or replaces ISS or any other options as it relates to discipline?
I feel like you can see me really easy tonight.
Yes, I love it. I didn't know you. Hey, thanks for dressing for me.
That's the hope here. Conscious discipline does support some therapeutic aspects. They always follow through with a consequence because that's the teachable moment. But we also know that about our brain states, if we are trying to give a student consequence when they are in their fight or flight, we are not going to maneuver and get that student to a place where they can understand the impact and the weight of their action. And so the recovery piece is for them to calm, for them to reflect, for them to talk about the processes of what to do next time, and then reflect on what the consequence is. Conscious discipline also gives a value to the staff members to stay regulated, so that we're also projecting a calm, safe space, so that we're not having staff members yell at students when they're feeling frustrated with their behaviors. It always comes back to a consequence. It's just about the timing of when we approach and we navigate that with the student.
I appreciate that insight, and to be clear, my statement isn't an indictment on conscious discipline. It was pointing out that really conscious discipline or anything else can't replace consequences. So I'm glad to hear that you're saying that there are still consequences.
Absolutely.
And I want, and hopefully, my intent in saying, in acknowledging, or in saying this and acknowledging the statement that was made by the SNEA president is to partly give the opportunity to acknowledge that there are consequences, that we hear that complaint, we hear that issue, and our intent, hopefully from my point of view, and hopefully from everyone's point of view in SPS, is not to replace consequences.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask, when did you receive this email? Was it today?
It's old.
Was it an
I
old
think
email?
it did come through today, did it not?
I don't remember when it came through.
I don't.
You talking about the statement from SNEA?
No, the answer to Loving
Yeah, I had asked a
Gardens.
question, I believe, yesterday specifically about what was
But did
this
you?
item on KCOB, and
Okay,
I believe the email response came through this afternoon.
At
Scott said it.
3:07? I think maybe moving forward, we did meet an executive session at 4 o'clock. I didn't know you'd ask this question, and I would have been interested in that answer. Maybe we can have a way to disseminate by text that there's an email.
You can check on your phone for email, and that's why board members are encouraged to ask questions whenever we post the agenda and send out the information as soon as possible so that Dr. Lathan and her team can get back to us well before the board meeting.
So you consider, so we're checking our emails.
I'm not going to
like-
send out a text message anytime an email goes out or on
Yeah,
the day
but it's
before.
less than an hour from a board meeting. So I just want to understand, so the expectation is I'm supposed to check my emails every 10 minutes?
No, the expectation is that we send our questions prior to Monday so that we can have an opportunity to respond.
I'm going to move on. Are there any other discussion matters on the consent agenda, or are we ready to vote?
When did you send your email?
I'd like to say one thing about conscious discipline. I'm certainly not an expert on that particular system. However, it's my understanding that it's really meant to reduce the need for consequences in the future. And so the fact that, an incident might occur, calming has to happen consequences are delivered, it's really meant to help reduce any further incident, to get the child to reflect on what's happened. So, and quite frankly, most of the training I've ever been to related to classroom management or managing student behavior has that as part of its focus. What can we do to get kids to make better decisions in the future?
I respect it, and I really do appreciate your insight on this matter as an educator. But again, I don't think anybody is disagreeing with that or questioning that. We just want the acknowledgement that we are not going lax on the consequences. That as we are doing these preventative measures, great, but that we are also still having firm and consistent consequences to action.
Okay, at this time we'll vote. The motion carries 6-0. Moving on to item 7.01, the treasurer's report. Dr. Shaw is at the podium to join us.
Good evening. You have the standard treasurer's report in your packet. The budget amendment and transfer report represents a period of the month of November. Operating revenues did remain unchanged with a very small change in expenses. Feels a little bit like a broken record, but the financial stability of the district remains constant, and we have a fund balance of 26.38 as of November 30th.
Thank you. The recommended action is that the board approve the treasurer's report as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from board member Muhammad Khani. Do I have a second? Second. Second from board member Bruner. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll vote. And the motion carries 6-0. Moving on to item 8.01, demographic study. Dr. Shaw will remain with us on this.
Okay, well, good evening again. As you recall, last month we had the demographic boundary study update was provided to the board from Davis Demographics. And through that report, there was a lot of information, a very long report, a very long presentation that focused on a lot of different things around boundary adjustments and two schools specifically. And so as we go through this particular report, let me just give you an idea of what we're going to talk through. We're going to give you a little bit of summary of what you saw last month, just to refresh your memory. We're going to talk specifically about Robertson and Pershing Elementary. There will be an administrative recommendation provided around those two projects tonight. And we'll also talk about the board policy FC as it relates to what we'll be discussing and then next steps. So as we go back and take a look at what the district-wide analysis mentioned, some of the highlights, you'll remember that student enrollment had a projected dip over the next 10 years of just under 280 students. So not much movement whatsoever. The PK5 is projected to increase, which is aligning with our preschool programs. In just the last couple of years, nearly 160 students have increased in that particular program. We have seen in the current snapshot the lowest middle school enrollment in 4 years. This is anticipated to rise. Obviously, if your elementary numbers are higher, middle school eventually will increase as well. But the decrease in middle school numbers will relate in decreased high school numbers over the next several years also. We do have approximately a capacity of 29,100 students in our buildings. Currently, that district-wide utilization rate is around 80%. A little lower than what we would like. We'd like to see that in the 85 to 90% for ultimate utilization, but still not bad. But we do have several campuses where they are operating currently at less than 60%. So let's talk about Robertson and Pershing Elementary. So last month you were provided with several different scenarios around the potential school closure or boundary change with Robertson Elementary. Currently, Robertson has 148 students within that attendance zone and is projected over the next 5 years to actually decline to approximately 113 students. One of the scenarios was around closing Robertson Elementary and having that entire attendance area flow into Boyd Elementary School, which is currently sitting underutilized as well. You can see the projections for Robertson over the next 10 years, and you can see how that does decline and then levels out, but still well under 50% of capacity of the actual school. Boyd is very similar, very stagnant, but also very low in utilization of that particular school. The plan impacts should Robertson go into all of Boyd Elementary. The first year, the current year would be utilization of 83%, and then a projection of 5 and 10 years in the low 70%. So a much better utilization than the two schools currently have, but also room for expansion should this be the option. I just wanted to point out current operational costs this year for Robertson Elementary do exceed $1.6 million. The majority of that, as you can see, is in salary and benefits, and then you can see the individual breakout. The low student nutrition that people look at and go, why is that so low? Really all that relates to are just minor supplies and smallwares. All of the food costs that we receive, that's also offset with the revenues from reimbursement. So that's really a net wash, which is not an added or subtracted expense for a particular school. So as we talk about Pershing, again, there were several different scenarios around the expansion or closure of just the K-5 part of Pershing. Currently 151 students within that enrollment. 36 of those are transfers in from other boundaries. This particular option divided the area of Pershing into two nearby schools, both Field Elementary and Wilder Elementary, and you can see the breakup of those 151 students along that railroad line. Pershing projected numbers is set to be in that 180 range over the next several years. Again, a small elementary when you think about a school being less than 200 students. Wilder is set to, projected to decline over the years and then stay steady at about 275, and that represents about a 70% utilization rate if those projections hold true. Field stays very steady at about an 85% projection utilization rate over the next several years. So in the event that Pershing Elementary were to close, the impacts for those particular boundaries, you can see that if that were to happen this year, you can see Wilder would go up to 106 as a percent of utilization and then go down to about 90% over the next 5 and 10 years. Field stays very steady at about 100% utilization. So as you recall in the budgeting of the Pershing project, whether it was a 6-8 building or it would be stayed a K-8 building, if it was a 6-8, there is dollars budgeted in the event that those students would go to another elementary or two elementaries, that there's dollars budgeted to be able to add on to those particular sites in the event that that was needed. Data obviously shows Field there would be a need for that. You wouldn't necessarily have to at 90% for Wilder, but it's certainly something we could do to make sure that we had room for growth and fit well within the budget of the project. These operational costs, again, are current for the K-5 part of Pershing. The salary and benefits, again, utilities, maintenance, custodial, and ground, those were factored in at 20% of what that school square footage is, and so that's why those are much lower, but nearly $1 million annually. So this brings us to a recommendation this evening. So the recommendation from administration for the board to consider would be to close the Robertson Elementary at the end of this current school year. adjust the attendance boundary and reassign students to Boyd Elementary to start in the fall of '24. The other recommendation would be to close Pershing Elementary at the end of the 25-26 school year, adjust that attendance boundary, and reassign students to Wilder and Field. Now, as a reminder, we won't be able to start the construction of Pershing, the reconstruction, the renovation of Pershing School until the Reed project is finished, and that would be probably May, June of '26. Therefore, we would have no need to move all of the students from the Pershing K-5 campus into Wilder and Field until that fall. Prior to any closure, Board Policy FC, closure, consolidation, reorganization, does require that the board can do this based on these items. It can be based on efficiency, it can be based on the physical condition of the building, it can be based on alternative use of school facilities, and it can be based on a change in educational focus. The process involves a hearing. There has to be a hearing convened by the Board of Education to elicit public comment for the proposed action. The superintendent or the designee will develop procedures to conduct the specific public hearing. We also have to make sure that the board has been given possible alternatives to what is being proposed, that the projected impact for each of these alternatives has been proposed, as well as enrollment data for current year and the next 3-year enrollment. Obviously, if a school is closed, there will be a reassignment of students. Students will be reassigned to a school where there's available space and can meet their educational needs. The attendance boundaries shall be redrawn with that appropriate reassignment, and students may apply for enrollment at a school other than the school in which they're assigned according to board policy. And finally, when a school does close, there will be a reassignment of employees, teachers, administrators, and other employees will be reassigned by the superintendent in accordance with board policy and law, or the CBA as we refer to. Also, in the closing, consolidation, or reorganization, if it requires that the district eliminate positions, then that also must be done in accordance with board policy and law. So, next steps after tonight. We do have 2 Let's Talk Live events scheduled, both at Robertson and Pershing. Robertson for January 4th, Pershing for January 8th. After those Let's Talk Live events, which will be scheduled so that parents, staff can come and ask administration questions on what this entails, what will this look like for me and my child. After that, the board would convene a hearing for the Robertson Community School closure on January 9th. That same evening, the board would be asked to vote on that item. And then on January 16th, convene a hearing for the Pershing Elementary School closure. And also, again, that evening, the board would be asked to vote on that measure. So those are next steps. Again, tonight, this is the recommendation. There is no action that we are asking of the board this evening. We spent a lot of time at the last meeting discussing and talking. I want to thank those board members who did spend time last week coming in, learning more about what we presented to you tonight, learning more about what that recommendation was going to be, and the opportunity that you all had to ask questions ahead of time and get clarity around these items before we did bring this to a public meeting. So
Thank
with
you,
that,
Dr. Shaw.
my presentation is finished.
And as Dr. Shaw referenced, I know many of us had an opportunity for the small group meetings to ask questions, but are there further questions from board members this evening?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, you probably mentioned it, but what is the utilization rate of Pershing Elementary School right now? I see there. Yeah, okay. I'll repeat the question. You probably stated it already, but what is the utilization rate of Pershing Elementary School right now?
I don't know that that was actually provided, Scott, in the presentation. It showed the chart of about 185 students.
Right.
It did show the top of that chart as 200. So that would be my understanding that that's where that utilization rate would be, so in the 90% range. It didn't specifically state, though, a percentage, but based on that chart, that would be my math analysis.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I'm looking at my calendar, so the January 16th will just be as part of the board here.
Before the board meeting. Before the hearing would be before the board meeting starts, yes.
Got it.
Any further questions? Okay. Any other board member questions? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shaw. Moving on to item 8.02, curriculum resource adoption. Good evening, Dr. Majors.
Good evening, board. Okay, good morning, or I'm sorry, good evening. Good grief. So each year, the curriculum team brings to you, annually, we bring to you new Missouri Learning Standards for approval. So I'll start off by sharing that tonight we are not bringing any new Missouri Learning Standards. The standards remained the same. But here is a glance at our agenda for tonight. So I'll first provide a brief overview of the adoption process, timeline, and shifts. And then I'll go into program evaluation for each of the content areas that are on cycle. Then we will review the summary and impact to SPS. And then I'll conclude tonight with next steps and how we're going to purchase, write, and create guides to direct the learning. Okay, so last year I want to remind you that we really focused on revising the process of how we review curriculum and make a decision on implementation for the following year. So our goal is always to ensure the most effective standards-aligned curriculum is provided for teachers. So tonight I'm excited because last year, probably around January, we presented to you a new curriculum management plan, but tonight I get to present the results of the first round of implementation of that process. So the visual on the left of the screen outlines the new curriculum evaluation phases. The new curriculum phases establish consistency across content areas. They also decrease the number of years between adoption cycles from 7 to 4, which in turn increases the number of content areas adopting within the same cycle. So we also added a yearly curriculum review process for ongoing revisions and support, because we know if our students aren't learning, we are not even waiting 4 years to make a change. We need to make a change sooner than that. Here you see the 5-step curriculum evaluation process and specific dates as they apply to the content areas you will hear about this evening. So last spring, the committee began meeting to evaluate the current curriculum, and we are currently in phase 2, which means that stakeholders have selected a resource to support the Missouri Learning Standards, and we are ready to make a purchase. The content areas included on this slide have completed program evaluation, and this evening we will outline next steps for you. So before I share details of the process and results, I want to recognize the curriculum directors and coordinators who led the work. So coordinators and directors, if you are here, please stand. They're real excited to stand and wave. Give them a round of applause. We appreciate their work to ensure a guaranteed and viable curriculum. Okay, so we will begin by providing a brief overview of the program evaluation process that each content area utilized. Each committee met at least 4 times in the spring of 2023. The committee started by identifying goals and measures. In meeting 2, the committee reviewed the curriculum evaluation tool. Again, this is new, and determined what evidence they would need and the process for obtaining the evidence to make a decision. Finally, the committee reviewed the process, explored vendor proposals, and identified the top 2 to 3 vendors. And representatives from the departments on the right, as well as many teachers, principals, EDs, community partners were represented on this committee. The new process relies heavily on multiple sources of evidence.
So here you'll see evidence utilized at the K-5 on the left side and the 6-12 level on the right side. An important part of the evaluation process is to analyze quantitative and qualitative data, which is why you'll see student achievement as well as student surveys. So, as always, when adopting a resource, I want to point out that what we teach in Springfield are the Missouri Learning Standards. So we will always purchase a curriculum resource to assist in teaching the standards, but ultimately our goal is to teach the Missouri Learning Standards. And again, for the adoption processes, you'll see today there was no change to Missouri Learning Standards. So for each content area, a rubric was scored based on the 5 categories listed here as a result of the evaluation process. So I won't go in depth to each rubric and what the scores were, but I do want to give you an overview of what these categories mean. So readiness for implementing the program means that all teachers understand the research behind the program and are well prepared to implement the program. Knowledge and skills means that staff are able to clearly articulate what successful implementation looks and sounds like and how specific practices will change as a result of implementation. Opportunity means that sufficient funds have been allocated for resources and teachers are provided a significant amount of support for implementation. Implementation with fidelity means that all staff involved implement the strategies with fidelity and collect and review formative data along the way. Finally, impact on student learning means that we're going to look at every year, are the students learning? And if students aren't learning, we have to figure out why. Okay, so this evening we'll begin with the 6-12 math curriculum evaluation process, which focuses on the courses listed on the slide. The 6-12 math recommendation is to continue implementing illustrative math with revisions and modifications. In addition, the committee submitted an RFP for a new resource for 4th-year math courses. Okay, so here you will see an overview of the evidence review, which includes improved student achievement in math, the opportunity for real-time feedback from a teacher when the students are working independently. Also, one thing that the teachers noted is that we did want to add more time for practice for kiddos, and the addition of print resources has also increased the ability of the resource to meet the needs of the students. So when we turn and look at adjustments, some of the adjustments that are needed are providing additional lessons to ensure adequate coverage of all Missouri Learning Standards. Again, additional opportunities for practice. We know that kiddos need to practice those math skills to become, what's the word I'm looking for it to become natural to them. And then also to increase the opportunities for professional learning while also monitoring implementation of the curriculum. Again, throughout this whole process, it's important that we're also monitoring implementation as well as student achievement data. So we don't have time tonight to share all of the data that the evaluation committee reviewed, that we reviewed after the committee met, but I do want to highlight our 2022-23 Galileo data. So when comparing, we analyzed 5 to 8 classrooms, and when comparing the classrooms that were implementing the current curriculum, the classrooms that had high implementation showed higher student gains than the classrooms that had low implementation. So if I can direct your attention to the graph, we looked at, in the blue column, you'll notice we looked at end of the year Galileo scores for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then the gray indicates growth from beginning of the year on Galileo to the end of the year on Galileo. What you'll notice if you compare the sites with high implementation and low implementation is the sites that were implementing the curriculum showed improved increase in student scores. So I also want to highlight 6th to 8th grade map data by site over the last 3 years. So at the bottom, you'll notice that what you're looking at, the graph represents 9 different sites. So sites demonstrating high implementation, as highlighted here, saw greater increases in map scores than sites who were not implementing the curriculum with fidelity. Again, this is one of the many data points that were considered when analyzing impact on student achievement. Okay, here we're highlighting Algebra 1 EOC data, since all students take the Algebra 1 EOC at one time, either in 7th or as late as 12th grade. So sites demonstrating high implementation saw greater increases in MAP scores than sites who were not implementing the curriculum with fidelity. Okay, shifting to 11th through 12th grade impact and adjustments. On the previous slide, we looked at evidence that indicated IM was the right program. Here, you're looking at evidence that indicated this is not the right program to meet the student needs. So I mentioned previously that the committee submitted an RFP for a new resource for fourth year math courses. This decision was made due to a decline in student achievement, as well as the need for courses to be aligned to advanced placement. So again, on the right are adjustments needed. I won't read all of them to you, but you'll notice that the proposed adjustments include the modifications that I shared on the left that indicated it was not the right program. Okay, when we look at fourth year mathematics, the next steps for fourth year mathematics courses and AP Pre-Calc and Calculus are shared here. They include purchasing student licenses, which is the digital version of the textbook. Also include adding 5 textbooks per classroom so that students will have the option to take the textbook home if they want to. For AP Stats, that was for AP Stats, to ensure access for all students. And then also updating the curriculum to better align with AP standards. Okay, again, applied technical mathematics. For applied technical mathematics, a subcommittee of professional math teachers and the high school CDC unanimously agreed that the current professional math course is not meeting the needs of students. So one shift that was made is the class will now be called Applied Technical Mathematics, which will serve a need for students who may not benefit from the traditional Algebra 2 route, and will give them meaningful mathematics for potential future careers. Okay, shifting to 612 Health. The recommendation of the 612 Health Evaluation Committee is to develop curriculum within SBS and ensure that the curriculum is aligned with best practices, and also include a balance of print and digital resources, and offer partnerships with the community. The slide here outlines the specific purchases that will be made. On the right of the slide is a sample digital video, and then here is also an example of the print resource that accompanies the digital resource. There is no expense for the district for these purchases due to a community partner, which is it's community partner of the Ozarks, who graciously donated the funds to purchase this program. Okay, 612 PE. Here you will see the courses including in our 9th through 12th grade physical education program. Next year we will be adding careers in sports and wellness, which you'll see on the right. So for these courses, SPS curriculum guides will be developed to include best instructional practices and connections to the community. The supplies that will be purchased are PE supplies as well as weight room supplies. There is a lengthy list of them, so I will not list them out for you tonight. Okay, moving right along, shifting to 9 through 12th, business and marketing. On this slide, you'll see all the business and marketing courses. Give you a second to look at that. The evaluation committee recommended adjustments to better align to industry recognized credentials. Accounting and computer application courses will be revamped. They are adding no new courses. And digital design and digital communications will be removed as a seated course. And again, you'll see the purchases on the right, which include SPS will be developing the curriculum in-house, some digital and print resources, and updates to technology and equipment within classrooms. Okay, the final content area we will share this evening is K through 5 ELA. So I want to start by introducing you, if you've not read this document yet, to the Missouri Read, Lead, Exceed document, which was released by DESE and provides guidance on reading instruction in the state of Missouri. Here you'll see a summary of the initiative and requirements within on the left of the slide. This summer, DESE also released a model reading success plan that must be followed by districts. And previously, last year, we had been proactive and we adjusted some of our TST practices, which made the shift to reading plans a little bit smoother. So DESE also released a list of evidence-based instructional materials. So the instructional materials were not listed as required. However, you can apply for reimbursement for the materials only if you select resources that are on the list. Okay, the required reading success plan for all students who are 1 or more grade levels below requires additional data reporting to DESE, which is due in February of 2024. So here on the slide, you see a cut and paste from our district reading success plan. So I wanted to show this to you this evening because as a part of this plan, we are required to report to DESE specific skill deficit areas for each student who scores 1 or more grade levels below in reading. So it's very important to have a curriculum that is aligned and also provides intervention specific to these skill deficit areas that you see on the slide. Okay, so on this slide, you will see the exact language within Section 161 Revised Missouri Statute, which became law in the 2023 legislative session and specifically addresses reading instruction. So DESE outlined the requirements for reimbursement and eligibility for instructional materials. When it was initially released, DESE identified 2 vendors, McGraw-Hill Wonders and Benchmark Education Company, as approved. DESE considers that they meet the requirements of the Read, Lead, Succeed document. So on the evaluation committee, there were 35 teachers were represented. One of the shifts that we made is we wanted to make sure that we had 1 representative from every elementary school. There were equal numbers of representatives of each grade level, 4 principals, 1 instructional coach, representatives from 6 departments, as well as 4 executive leaders. So the impact conclusion recognized that the current ELA program does not meet district and student needs due to lack of depth, lack of alignment to priority standards, and cohesiveness. So once that determination was made, the evaluation committee outlined the necessary next steps, which include better alignment to Missouri learning standards, required professional learning for all K-5 teachers, job-embedded professional learning, as well as a tool for measuring curriculum implementation. The committee then revised the K-5 program goals, which include a guaranteed and viable curriculum, resources, and assessments, ongoing job-embedded professional learning, the provision of a variety of grade level and instructional level text at sites, and literacy interventions and extended learning opportunities for all students. The committee then submitted a request for qualifications. They developed a rubric to score the vendors, and they narrowed, initially we had 14 vendors that responded to the RFQU, and so they narrowed the 14 vendors down to a list of 3 and requested physical samples and vendor demos. The final 3 are listed on the slide in bold print. So in order to select a vendor, all K-5 teachers, coaches, and principals were invited to provide feedback on the top 3 ELA vendors. We received responses from 62 unique teachers, 2 principals, and 15 coaches. Resources were available to view in person or virtually on Zoom. We wanted to provide both options, knowing that coming to KAC to review curriculum after a day of teaching might not work for everyone. So we also added the extra incentive of we paid teachers $30 for each vendor that they reviewed, and teachers could have earned a maximum of $180 for reviewing and providing feedback to the curriculum team. So we do anticipate that we had a lower participation rate due to DESE releasing a limited list of recommended resources. Okay, so without further ado, the final recommendation is benchmark advance. The 12 considerations listed here were the primary reason that benchmark was selected. I'll give you just a second to look at those 12 recommendations or considerations. Okay, so here I wanted to provide just a snapshot. I know that might be a little hard for you to read, but this is an example of what each first grade teacher will receive. So you'll see that they are getting teacher resources, intervention resources, small group resources, phonics decodable readers, as well as student consumables. So this slide really outlines a summary of how certain components of Fontes and Pinnell, which is our current ELA curriculum, compare to Benchmark Advance. So I won't read all of them to you, but I will point out just a few. So you'll notice that currently we have no small group reading support. Teachers create their own lessons utilizing a book from the book room. With Benchmark Advance, decodables and leveled text are included. They also provide small group reading and lessons for supporting specific skill deficits, which we think will be a huge support for teachers. Also, I'll direct your attention to the second line. The current curriculum teaches components in isolation. Benchmark Advance is a comprehensive program. Benchmark Advance also includes alignment to our science and social studies standards, which is always important. With Fontes and Pinnell, there are no consumables included with the curriculum. And Benchmark Advance provides a student magazine, which is a consumable for students to annotate text, and they get one of those for each unit. Here you'll see our implementation timeline. Okay, so to summarize the 23-24 adoption, for 612 Health, we will be developing curriculum guides in-house and purchasing some supplies. The same is true for K-12 PE. For 612 Math, we are revising the current curriculum to include all standards, as well as developing curriculum that aligns to advanced placement and dual credit. For 9 through 12 Business and Marketing, again, we're developing curriculum in-house that includes digital and print resources. And then for K-5 ELA, we would like to purchase Benchmark Advance, and we will be requesting reimbursement from DESE. So we do qualify for reimbursement. However, the second window has not opened. When it does, we will be applying for reimbursement, which is close to $213,000 that we're eligible to receive. Okay, so for next steps, here I'll take you right back where we started to the curriculum resource process, selection process. So hopefully, when is it? January 16th is when you'll vote. So hopefully January 17th, we will begin writing teacher guides. That is the next step. And then we'll spend the spring and summer writing curriculum guides. It will take us quite a while, and we'll be ready for implementation in the fall of 2024. So as we develop an implementation plan, these are three things that were very important. So if you remember when I presented the new curriculum management process, one thing that we did not do well previously is ensure that we are providing job-embedded learning, not just at the onset of the adoption, but throughout implementation of the curriculum. So we want to provide high-quality curriculum-based professional learning. The hope is to offer that in spring and summer. Typically, teachers don't have access to their resources until August. We want to give them access in the spring so that they can begin to become familiar with those lessons so that they'll feel more confident in implementing the curriculum. We hope to provide multiple opportunities, and we want those opportunities to be ongoing throughout the school year, not just a one and done. We want to provide job-embedded learning and support, so we are going to leverage our instructional coaches, which are at every site currently, to model and co-teach along teachers. We can also provide job-embedded professional learning through PLT meetings as we analyze that data and shift instruction based on the data that's in front of us. We have to monitor implementation. So We will use formative assessment to drive instruction regularly, and then we will be monitoring implementation of the curriculum and providing tons of support for teachers. Okay, this concludes the curriculum resource adoption. Thank you for your time. What questions do you have?
Thank you, Dr. Majors. Are there any questions from board members?
Say that again?
Sorry, are there any questions?
No, but I have a comment at the moment.
Sure.
I really appreciate the time and effort that your team did for reviewing this process. And I really liked your rubric and your matrix that you used for scoring. I appreciate the fact that you guys used multiple data sources for evidence, and that you also included both qualitative and quantitative data. It makes the process just feel so much more meaty, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm also, of course, very happy to see the changes to the ELA reading process to align better with science of reading and letters. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it okay if I ask some questions? Slide 16. I might have missed this if you said this, but you start making several references to high implementation and low implementation.
Mm-hmm.
How are you measuring that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the first things I did when I got this position was I created a curriculum implementation survey. And so previously we didn't have a great way of measuring implementation. So every building leader sat alongside each grade level team and they completed the survey. So the survey asked specific questions regarding what portions of the curriculum they were implementing, and if they weren't, why, and what they were using to supplement. So that process was really not to say that anyone was doing anything wrong. It was really to find out what are we using across campuses, because we knew that not every site was implementing the curriculum. And so we utilized that data, which was self-reported. We also utilized observation data and feedback from building leaders.
Was it boiled down into any sort of measurable metric? Is this because it can be very useful information in what you're trying to portray here. I just want to make sure that the information is substantive, valid. So self-reported. I don't know. I'm having a hard time figuring out how you use that, how you really measured it.
Yeah, so this data is something we looked at actually after the evaluation team had met, simply because we wanted the data. So, and that's why this is simply one piece of data that we looked at, and that's the beauty of the new process, is we look at multiple forms of data. So when that evaluation committee met, one of the first things that they did is they looked at a rubric with 7 components of what an effective curriculum looks like. And so one of the things that they decided is, what evidence do we need to make that decision? So they first looked at the rubric, and then they talked to each other and questioned, how can we score this rubric? So how will we know? So we looked at we surveyed teachers to get input. The implementation survey was just one piece of data. So this decision was not made solely on this data. This was just one piece.
So after you sat and had interviews at the building level with those teams, you scored them somehow? You basically put them in the category of this team was low implementation and this team was high implementation?
No, so we scored the curriculum evaluation rubric is what we scored, which is separate. That's a part of the curriculum evaluation process. So for this, we looked at what sites are implementing the curriculum, and then we looked at student learning, because we want to know, if you're implementing the curriculum, is it resulting in student learning? And so sites that said we are not implementing the curriculum, we looked at their data as it compares to sites who are implementing the curriculum.
So the site self-evaluated and said we either are or are not implementing?
Alongside the principal.
So you had principals just tell you honestly, we're not implementing this.
We did, yes. For certain components, and it was valuable information. As you saw, there are adjustments being made to the curriculum. That was the committee's recommendation. So that's why it wasn't a gotcha. We wanted to know, if you're not implementing it, why? What shifts can we make now, knowing that we're still utilizing this curriculum, but what shifts can we make to ensure that it's meeting the needs of our students?
Okay. Slide 21, you explained a name change. Applied technical mathematics is replacing professional math. You explained that as a name change. Is that really just the same program with the name change?
Yes, and hold on just a second. Let me go to my notes. So, it's slide 21, right? That's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Whitney is here, so Whitney may be able to share. Come on up. This is Whitney, our 612 math coordinator, so I'm going to let her talk to you about the name change.
Yep, so it is more than a name change. It's going to be a brand new course. So previously professional math, I kind of had the feeling of financial math, just plus a little bit. And so a lot of students were going into that class and not really getting things that were relevant to their career paths. And so we looked at what was the demographic of the students that were typically not going on to Algebra 2, but what math would they benefit from? And so we're actually working with OTC, and they have a class called Applied Technical Mathematics. And that is a great option for students that want to go into courses into things like welding, construction, and different trades especially. And so this is going to be a way for them to get some articulated credit if that's the path they want to go. And even if they don't go to OTC, they're going to get a wide variety of math concepts they could actually use with their career trajectory. So it will be a brand new class.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Whitney.
Any other questions?
Yeah. This one just kind of stood out to me on slide 26. We have a PE class called Walking 101.
Brad?
Is there?
What is that?
So it's a course that is geared towards getting success-ready students ready to be active after high school. If you think about the most common way young adults stay active, it's walking is one of those common ways. And so they learn all kinds of concepts and skills that are important in being active as a young adult, whether it be learning about their heart rate, learning where it's safe to walk, learning different pacing methods. It's more than just walking, and it's a great elective for our high school PE students.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brad.
36. So as justification as to why we're changing K through 5 ELA, this first paragraph says less than 50% of students were proficient or advanced on the map. Yet, in math, I believe even less. That presentation's coming next, so I don't have that information right in front of me. But in math, I believe even less, or than whatever the number in ELA is, are proficient. Even though there is maybe showing some sort of improvement. So how do we use that sort of justification to change course on ELA and not use that same justification to change course on math?
So historically, math scores are lower than ELA, even across the state. So one thing that we look at is growth. So in ELA, our data has been flatlined. We have not really been growing as a district at all. In math, we are seeing growth, especially in middle school, which Dr. Holt is going to present to you in just a minute.
So maybe a different justification here that could be used is that for ELA, less than 50% are proficient and the growth is flat, whereas in math, less than 50% are proficient, but there is some growth.
Yes.
The growth is what we're focused on. Okay.
Not only growth, but yes, we are focused on both.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Is it my turn?
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Hello.
I want to start off by commending you for your adoption process
Thank you.
shifts along with your K-5 ELA shift. It's a step. It's a leap in the right direction. And your conclusions are the product of the good processes that you've had in place. I really like the way you did your ELA evaluation work. You took one teacher out of every site in that committee. And then when you went to evaluate for adoption, you put a massive effort towards getting numerous, dozens and dozens of teacher input for selection. And then the plan that you have for professional development is incredible. You absolutely need a commitment that's critical for implementation, as you know, to get buy-in from the teachers so that you get buy-in from the parents and then the students.
Thank you.
I also want to say that I think math is different than ELA. You get a lot more help at home with reading than you do with math. And I'm going to talk about that here momentarily. So I just wanted to point that out, that we're going to see massive gains with English language arts. But I also think that you should advertise this. I think transparency is wonderful, but I would get the blowhorns out and put it all over the website and talk about this and get everybody, including the community, excited. This is going to be big, right? Like, not just 2-3 points. We can shift 10, maybe 20 points in a relatively short period of time.
We're expecting that. We're excited.
Yes, so am I. Okay, now I'm going to shift to mathematics. So what percentage of students would you say, and I'm going to call it AJ, so Algebra 1 Geometry, Algebra 2, by 10th grade? Would you say that's not the majority, right? The majority are still doing Algebra 2 in 11th and 12th grade.
I'm going to ask Whitney, what would you say? Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think it's really fair to say that we're going to consider AGA as 6 to 10. So the shift that's coming in 11 to 12 impacts a very small portion of students. That's an important thing to point out. And the declining ACT scores can't be used as justification for changing the 11-12. That should be the push for going after AGA, because we're not worried. You know, our ACT scores aren't suffering because little Johnny couldn't get a 36. He got a 34 because he didn't have that calculus class that delivered for him, right? We're struggling with Algebra 1 and geometry. That's where you see the movements from somebody who gets a 10 or a 12 to a 20 or a 21 on their math ACT. That could massively shift our ACT scores, right? Would you agree with that statement?
I don't know that I can agree or disagree.
Okay, so on slide number 15, you have 6th through 8th grade adjustments needed. Can I assume that those adjustments are going to carry through algebra, geometry, algebra 2?
Did you say slide 15?
15, yeah, that's the one that talks about increased direct instruction, more practice, more professional learning. That's going to be across the board on illustrative math, not just 6 through 8, right?
Correct. Those are best practices.
Those are best, okay.
Yes.
So that slide is really 6 through 10, I suppose. Okay, thank you. And then I do have, and please bear with me, because I have some points I want to make. You know, I think you did talk about implementation. Mr. Byrne asked about that. So that's really a question, a matter of buy-in. I think fidelity becomes really hard to judge because the adjustments that are being made, which is essentially bastardizing the program, the curriculum, those differences could reflect the teachers that had buy-in or the adjustments that were made, or how well those teachers were developed, right? How many years they were here and how much professional development they received. But I do want to say a few things about illustrative math. I think the fundamental issue with what is seemingly an incredible piece of pedagogy and theory is that it really struggles with student, parent, and teacher buy-in. When we were in school, we didn't learn 3 different ways to do multiplication. And we weren't taught like this, right? So I struggled when Common Core came along. Many parents did, but we muddled through it because we had a soft textbook or a consumable that showed us how to do it. We complained a lot, but ultimately we trusted the educators on this idea that this was the better way to do math. And maybe I smiled a little bit when I caught my kids writing in really teeny tiny font to the edge of their paper the way that their mommy taught them how to do it at home, right? But the reality is that when you try to roll this new math, which is what this is, right? This is Common Core being delivered digitally. Without intense professional development, you see the same thing happening. What happened in the home is now happening in the classroom, where you don't have buy-in from the teachers, they're not up to speed because the process or the curriculum isn't really clear to them. And it's already not clear to the parents, and then you have a situation where the kids aren't comfortable with what's happening. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So I have a graduate degree, and I found illustrative math impossible to follow. Their lesson pacing and relevance were not developmentally appropriate for a student that's not used to learning from a screen rather than from a teacher. It was certainly content-rich. It did not rely, as you've already said, on a foundation of practice, which is essential to advancing competence. What I experienced, and I experienced this quite correctly because I did my research and I communicated with the company, is that this practice of taking a student and dropping them into an unfamiliar math problem with minimal introduction, essentially no instruction, and then refraining from answering questions or correcting errors is at the core of their approach. This idea that if a student struggles and through this process of self-discovery, they learn math in a deep and meaningful way that lays the foundation for math concepts, that broadens their capabilities so they can go out in the global market, because all the other countries that are mathematically advanced are so much better than us. And if we do math this new way, then our students can compete in that kind of competitive market. That's how they sold it, how they continue to sell it. And it sounds really, really good, and it's conceptually really attractive. But I personally found the lack of structure, the complete absence to well laid out lessons and examples, the lack of built-in repetition extremely confusing. And my student was frustrated. And, you know, it was good to hear from a couple people that emailed us, noticed this was on the docket. We had somebody come speak to us in the public comment period. Illustrative mathematics believes that if you understand at its core, math at its core, then you don't have to practice it to be competent. And that is simply false. If we want to teach kids how to walk quietly in the hallway, we have to start practicing that in kindergarten, and we've got to do it over and over again. So I really just cannot understand why math suddenly gets an exemption on practice makes better. Just hang in there with me. So it's called Illustrative Mathematics in high school. It's the very same thing in middle school. We call it Desmos. It is basically Common Core repackaged and delivered in a digital format. Now, Missouri moved away from Common Core, right, supposedly. It's an important distinction to make, and while there are many critics of Common Core, I'm not going to weigh in on that, but the idea that Common Core came around and it was popularized and it was conceptualized was because it was a fundamentally different approach to math. It wasn't just rote memorization, and it promised to catapult the students forward, right? But my research tells me that this is essentially the same premise of Singapore math, which is what most homeschool children do. The key difference there is it comes with textbooks, workbooks, I don't know, teacher's guide, parents' guides, I guess I would call it. So they both build on teaching math in this novel way to young children, but that's the big difference. And I think the issue with the current math that we have is it's still Common Core, so it's still new and confusing to a lot of parents out there, but they don't have a guide to follow. So at the end of the day, it ends up being not student-friendly and it's not parent-friendly. And that's, I think, what bothers me the most about it. The lessons are still delivered digitally. There's very little step-by-step instruction. And right now we're trying to move away from using Chromebooks to teach the kids. And then there's this idea that you have that when the homework is graded, it's graded in real time. The problem is The teacher can't see the steps that are being missed, so they can't come in and fill in those gaps where that knowledge gap exists. And then there's very little homework, and there's no fluency practice. So we're asking students that are behind to take their Chromebooks home, right? The same Chromebooks we said, oh, we don't want you to take them home, but that's where we're delivering math curriculum. And then on top of it, IM is all problem-based. And the problem we have is that our students are not grade proficient. They can't read. So that becomes very, very frustrating for the students. So if you're trying to do IM, let's say in 4th grade, or Desmos, call it whatever you want, and you don't have a student that can read at a 4th grade level, or who can do multiplication, which they should have learned in 3rd grade, they're really going to struggle, because illustrative mathematics is a very rigorous curriculum. I love that it's rigorous, but the majority of students are really struggling with it. And the most significant design flaw is that their Tier 1 instruction relies on a collaborative learning opportunity that centers on the collective student activities. And there's teacher-guided or facilitated, but it's not what I would consider teacher-taught.
Board Member Mohammed Kadi, it's been 10 minutes.
I'm sorry. I'm
Please
just
see
going
if any other board members have questions or comments.
A couple minutes of your time. I'm almost done.
Okay.
I just took some notes.
We don't usually borrow time.
We will in
but
this
that's-
instance.
That's fine. You
Because
can
I've asked
continue.
for curriculum discussions in the past. Okay, let me get back to my notes, because I wanted to hit some key topics. So we're not delivering direct instruction, or I call traditional instruction, and I'm really pleased to see the adjustments that you make are hitting each and every one of these. More practice, more fluency, more direct instruction. The problem is, and so that we don't leave students behind, right? Math is math no matter what. But here's the thing. We're not getting reinforcement in the home because the workbooks that go home do not have an easy-to-follow explanation. And this becomes relevant because we're going to be asked to vote on something that's coming up in just a couple of things down the business agenda. And while we might have recent graduates who can't count back change, the parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles right now can count back change. They absolutely can do math. And I think we could partner with them, but we can't because IM is too confusing. And let me just touch on fidelity, because you brought it up. This intense requirement for teacher training. And we implemented in a terrible time. It was during COVID. Kids weren't seated, professional development was super limited, and we have so much turnover. We literally have hundreds of new teachers that we hire every year, and this new way of teaching, it requires intense professional development and buy-in. So when you have new teachers coming in, we have students coming in from other places that aren't using it, it just makes it really tricky. And then the teachers that do figure it out, like, hey, I got this, I can do this, in order to really implement it, it's very burdensome. Why? Because they have to work with the students to fill in the workbooks. And then if a student is absent or behind, then who's going to do the catching up? You can't do it independently. You can't do it at home. So then it puts burden on the teacher. The teacher, as you point out, has to supplement, has to do homework. So they're Xeroxing, they're copying. There's a lot that goes in. You're moving these MAP scores, right? But it takes tremendous work for the teachers to move them, given what we have. You know what? I have a few more comments, but I'll do them later. But let me just finish with this. I'm all for doing math this way because I do think that it will advance and allow our students to achieve more. The problem is, there's a lot of value in learning math this way. The problem is, if you have 5 years to learn algebra, this is the best way to learn algebra, but you don't have that kind of time. We have 1 year to teach our students algebra. And when we went to implement this, and I think it's great, maybe if we'd started in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, but we started with middle school. Then we went to high school. Then we went to elementary. So there was kids doing this. That's why the growth wasn't there, who'd never seen this kind of math before, being delivered digitally to them. And we were literally the first people in line. We did it that way because that's how it rolled off the press, right? The company released middle school first, then high school, then elementary. Standing first in line. There's absolutely no data to support it, but we picked it up and we ran with it. And I do think it's important to point out that the people that adopted it, right, the curriculum director of math, the director of the entire department, the superintendent that oversight, and the board, with the exception of one member that approved it, are no longer here. And we're holding the bag. So the question is it a great program? Yes. Is it the best program for our students? Does it fit our needs? Just like Mr. Byrne pointed out.
Board Member Muhammad Khani,
Are
it's now
we-
been 15 minutes.
All right, I'm done. Question is,
I just want to point out that.
are we
this
going to follow
Board has made it very clear that we're going to follow Robert's Rules of
good
Order.
money with bad?
I've given you another 5 minutes. We're going to move on to see if any
Okay.
other board members have comments at this time.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions with regards to this agenda item?
I'd like to
I
comment that I think. what-
misspoke. I meant bad money with good, sorry. I got a
You're
little
correct.
excited there.
I'd like to comment that I know we have a framework of rules that we agreed to. However, I think what Dr. Muhammad Khani was saying may be one of the most important things we've talked about in the time that I've been on the board. And if there is a way for her to finish her thoughts completely, because I do acknowledge this is something that she's been trying to speak on for quite some time,
Do you have your mic on?
that we somehow as a board decide to do that. I certainly would be in favor in letting her finish this line of thinking. I'm certainly finding it compelling.
I would not like to set a precedent of doing that. I think this is something that goes on too often on this board. We do set up our rules so that we can maintain a business meeting that is reasonable for all of us to attend, including our audience and community members. As a university professor, one of the reasons that I have my students give succinct responses to their essay questions is so that they don't just go on and on and on, and they have to summarize what they have to say and make it presentable in a shorter chunk of information.
In the words of the parliamentarian at MSBA, if you can't succinctly give your statement, she suggested it in 5 minutes, then perhaps you need to revise your statement. And again, I understand that this topic is important. We have other topics that are important to other board members, and I agree, I do not want to set a precedent where a board member can speak for an unlimited period of time.
I have a couple of things to say. And I was just taking notes during Dr. Major's presentation, like I think everyone was, and then taking additional notes based on some of the conversation that I'm hearing up here. I had a very similar question to Board Member Byrne about high implementation and low implementation and implemented with fidelity and what that really looked like and how it might be measured. So I appreciate you asking the question and you answering it. I know that classroom teachers have a lot of creativity. They look at the standards, they look at their kids, they run the formative assessments. They come up with a lot of really creative and ingenious ways of presenting the information, and I appreciate that. I do think, when we talk about implementation with fidelity, we'll have to find the balance in there between not stifling the creativity of the best and the brightest educators that we have, and yet following things with fidelity as we might hope as a board and as a district. It is a balancing act, and I will trust that you all will come up with some way to get that done. I, too, have been very impressed with the thoroughness of your report and all the work that went into it and the thoughts behind it. It is very impressive. I like the idea of the change in the math curriculum at the high school level, professional math. Honestly, having come out of that high school environment not long ago has kind of gotten a dreary look to it. And so the fact that we're talking about applying math into careers and technical education, to me, that's huge, and that is absolutely a step in the right direction. And I think it will appeal to students that want to know the why. This generation wants to know why. And if we can't give them the why of why they need to learn it, they turn us off pretty quickly. And my generation wanted to know why too, but nobody cared. So, we're going to answer that for them, and we should be able to. So I like the shift in that not only in title, but in the idea behind it. As far as walking PE is concerned, I think that sounds kind of weird, but I've watched those walking PE classes over at Central when I was there, and they appeal to kids that we might not be able to get to do any other PE, and they're out there walking. And for me, they're absolutely right. Brad Brummel was right. That is a lot of the exercise that some of us get. And so the fact that they're learning about monitoring heart rates and the value of being rigorous when you walk and how that's done. And again, I saw kids participating in that probably wouldn't have participated in other things. I'm interested, Dr. Mahatmakani, about the research that you're citing. You sent me some information, it's been a few months ago now, regarding reading. And I told you at the time I listened to those podcasts and I appreciated that opportunity. So you've cited several pieces of research related to the illustrative math, and please share that with me and the rest of the board if you're able to do so. I will remind everybody, and I'm the oldest person in the room, but back when I was in junior high and elementary and in high school, everything that when they referenced math, they called it new math. And so my parents didn't know what to do with that either, and I don't know how really different it was from how they had learned, but an idea of new math has been around for a long time. As far as counting change, I learned that from my mother, who said, you need to learn how to count change back so no one can cheat you. And so, I didn't learn that in school, but I learned it from a caring mother that wanted me to keep my money. I will tell you that I'm working some with the math education department over at Missouri State and have inquired about the illustrative math and their position on that. At least the one gentleman that I did talk to, he's in favor of it. So I'm hoping, and I'm going to go back, and I'll get back to you, to the whole board, if you would like. I'm going to ask what kind of training pre-service teachers are getting with illustrative math, because the professor that I visited with, when I asked him, he said that he thought it was going in the right direction. I am of the opinion that some of the frustration, perhaps not all, because I'm not going to minimize what you were saying, but I think some of the frustration was, and I was at the high school level when this was first introduced, we dropped people into it, and it was very, very confusing, and there was some teacher resistance to it, there was some student resistance to it, there was parent resistance to it, but I also found that the second year of implementation, at least as I observed it, their comfort level was getting greater in terms of how to teach it and how to support kids with it. So I'm going to hope that that has continued, but I do want to find out from the math department over at the university with their feeling, and if they are supportive of it, are they teaching their pre-service teachers how to use that as a resource? I think that would be valuable for us to know. I think that's it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bruner. I wanted to clarify, so when we talk about curriculum implementation, we're talking about first-time instruction. So we're going to use the curriculum the first time we teach the lesson. So I could put the 4 guiding questions of the PLT on the slide. You guys have seen them 1,000 times, and Dr. Holt might do that in a minute. So, but that's the important part of that process. So as a teacher is analyzing, these are the standards we taught. Did the students learn it? Did they not learn it? Our curriculum implementation requires teachers to be more instructionally agile now than ever before, because we have students who aren't going to learn based on first-time instruction. And so that's when teachers have to go to those other high-yield instructional practices that we're focusing on. Marzano, we're building their instructional practice, and they have to reteach and plan for intervention. So when we talk about curriculum implementation, it involves instructional agility on the part of the teacher, because we know that one lesson is not going to meet the needs of every single student in our classroom. So teachers are going to have to be agile enough to look at the data and shift instruction accordingly. So, and Dr. Mahamakadi, the great news about the new process is that we assess the curriculum every single year now. So every single year we'll be looking at, are the changes, is the increased direct instruction, is the more independent practice that we're providing, is that continuing to improve student learning? And if it's not, we will continue to make shifts.
I have a couple of comments to make. I don't disagree with everything Dr. Mahamakani said. One of the things that I would like to see during the process of writing the teacher guides is perhaps that the curriculum committee could also work on developing some parent guides, because I do think that it's a challenge for parents to support their students in math in the same way that they support children in reading, because most parents, I would assume, have at least some level of reading proficiency, at least enough for those early development of children's literacy skills. Math is very different, so having that supporting guide is going to be important for parents, and I don't know if it's something that the curriculum committee can do, is to create those, but I think that's important. I'm also just concerned about what happens to students who don't catch on, and what kind of remediation is available for those students at the Tier 1 level, or is there just nothing at Tier 1 may end up in a Tier 2 kind of support system?
Yeah, so we shared earlier in the school year that now with every curriculum guide, there's a tab that includes resources for intervention and reteach. That's something that we've not provided for our teachers, and we're just continuing to build those resources. It takes time, but I know our curriculum team is working daily to add resources, because we also know that teachers, when they get to question 3, and if the students didn't learn it, you may have 5 kiddos that need reteaching, and that's a lot of work. So we wanted to create a page for them to go to that they can count on that being guaranteed and viable in response to kiddos who are not learning the curriculum. So we want to do some of that work for them so that they can spend their time teaching the kids in the classroom, implementing the lessons that we know address the standard.
And just to also respond to something that Dr. Mahamakani said was regarding students who have low literacy levels with this question-based inquiry process. Is there a way to differentiate instruction for students who lack those necessary foundational skills, or are those kids automatically going to end up in some type of additional intervention?
So we expect teachers to be instructionally agile every day. So, I mean, as a principal, when I walked into a classroom, I got to see the magic of the teachers. If they were following the curriculum, and say it was an IM warm-up, they did the warm-up, then they went into the activity, which might be inquiry-based. If they realized in that moment that the kiddos weren't getting it, they can stop and do further direct instruction and reteaching of the students. And that is what we expect. We expect teachers to be agile enough to read the room and know when their students aren't getting it. One thing that teachers also did is we have a daily formative assessment. IM provides that, and so they can use that assessment in time that day and pull a small group back and provide intervention right then, so that tomorrow when we move on, tomorrow we're moving on to a different standard maybe, so we have to provide intervention that day.
And I also agree with what Ms. Bruner said about buy-in. My experience from talking with teachers around the district, particularly math teachers, is that they struggled with it for the first year, but many of them have gotten on board after the second year of using the program and really like it.
Thank you.
Any further comments at this time?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Or two. So on slide 10, which is program evaluation evidence for the math, you had the second last bullet on 612 evidence is Desmos usage report. Can you please explain what that is?
So the Desmos usage report just tells us how much teachers are utilizing Desmos, how much students are using Desmos.
Hey, tell me what Desmos is again.
Whitney, do you want to come give an explanation?
That's just the platform for Illustrative math.
Oh, that's the platform.
Yeah, that's the platform that we utilize.
Okay, great. All right. And then I just, applaud all the committees and the work that they've done. And, I'm not an educator, but I'm married to one, English major. And I'm very passionate about reading especially. It's so essential for learning. And the earlier you start it, the better. You learn to write, and, if you can read, learn to read, you can read a word problem. You can do math, and it improves your self-esteem and self-confidence. And what you guys are putting together here is great. And I agree it needs to be advertised, like Dr. Mahamakani said. Because as I really see growth, I see growth not only in reading, but also in other areas once they learn how to read better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions?
I just want to also recognize Dr. Lathan in this process. As the superintendent, this kind of reorganization came under her leadership. So, we're thanking you guys for all the hard work, but it was a part of her vision and a part of her implementation with your committee in order to provide these kind of reorganizations. So thank you also for your leadership in this vision for our curriculum.
Yes, I agree. The day she hired me, I got a to-do list. I wasn't officially in the position yet, but she said, shift that page in your notebook, and I said, I'm on it.
Yeah, she said.
And she did direct this work.
She did say
You're right.
from day one, she said, yes, it's got to happen. It's going to take some time. It's going to happen, and we're seeing the fruits of that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, 5 to 10 minute break. Then the KCOB been requested to be removed from a consent agenda by a board member. The recommended action is that the board approve the K-5 illustrative mathematics purchase for the 24-25 school year as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from board member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from board member Bruner. Any further discussion on this item?
Yes. Okay, I'm just going to continue with, because this is really what I was trying to get to. We heard Dr. Majors say that we are continually building resources. And I guess I'm just old, but I don't understand why our resource can't just be a textbook. And then the Chromebooks, which admittedly we're trying to move away from teaching kindergarten through 5th graders, right? We're trying to limit screen time. Why can't then the Chromebooks be the enrichment? Or, because there's no perfect textbook out there, right? They all have gaps. There's nothing perfect out there, I get it. Why can't then the digital platforms be where we fill in those gaps, right? And then we've got the perfect union. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the answer is Singapore. I don't know, but what I do know is that we're leaving a whole heck of a lot of kids behind. And I just want the board to consider. I want to go back until we get literacy under our belts. We're going to be struggling with constantly coming back with tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. And we are losing ESSER supports, right? Those numbers reflect a heck of a lot of teachers working super hard and more people, more adults in the rooms with the kids, right? And we're getting ready to lose some of those supports. My goal is so that we can have everybody learn, and I know that maybe this is a very basic, simple approach. If we could just get addition down in 1st grade, subtraction down in 2nd grade, multiplication in 3rd, division in 4th, and then you could just take IM and go crazy with it, right? Drop these kids into word problems, because also by then we've got the literacy coming along. So that's why I asked this to be separated out. And let me, before I make my ask of the board, let me go back to, so board members, this is all in your packets at some point. But I want to go over some of the program evaluation committee summary. And I realize it's for 6-12, but it has an impact on K-5. So the research shows that learning math is not mimicking the teacher, other students, or resource. Learning math is not memorizing. Learning math is not being fast at arithmetic. Learning math is not getting 100% on a worksheet of procedural problems. Learning math is not following along while your teacher shows you how to solve a problem. And then there's a whole list of conclusions on what learning math is. And I agree with all of it. But I do fundamentally disagree with what learning math is not. It's not just this, but there is a component of memorizing, of being quick with arithmetic. And the ultimate goal of math is indeed to get 100% correct. When you go to buy a house, when you go to buy a car, when you want to be financially literate, when you want to be successful, you do need to know math, and you do need to be correct. So this idea that there isn't a right answer, it's pretty black and white. Math, there is right. And then on some of the other conclusions, selecting a curriculum. This is the research from the 2023 math program evaluation. The goal is to select a curriculum that stays away from traditional practices, like I do, we do, you do. That's supporting teachers in less traditional practices. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do new practices. I'm all for like new, innovative, yes, let's do it. But what I can't understand is why we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? Here we're down in the trenches. Why don't we use some of the traditional practices and then piggyback some innovative ways? Here's another one that I think the board needs to hear again. That drill and kill exercises without understanding can harm students' mathematical understanding, their motivation level, and the way they view mathematics. That direct instruction should not consume a significant portion of instructional minutes. See, I would argue that direct instruction in the early elementary years are actually the only thing that can move instruction, that can move the needle. Now, I'm not talking about middle school or high school. I'm really focusing on K-5 right now. And what I think really harms the students' confidence is when they're failing because they can't read and they can't do basic computation. That's what gets them. Not because someone's making them go do drill. I've never heard kill, but drill and kill. And then this idea that if you go and look at the documents that's been shared with you, board members, you'll see that we're moving away from homework. I really don't understand it. I'm going to go on to the 7 key features of a strong curriculum, and I just want to make sure that you've seen these. 6 through 8, AGA. That's what I'll just focus on AGA. So there were 7 key features. They were scored as, on the lowest end, requires substantial revision. Then the curriculum is minimally effective, and ideal. And on the 7 key features on algebra, geometry, algebra 2, so there's your ACT scores right there. On 6 of those parameters, it's minimally effective. And on grades 6 through 8, it's 2 minimally effective, 5 effective. Not one grade level thought that illustrative mathematics was ideal. So here's what I get. I get that it's okay, you know, it's working, right? It's working. I don't want working. I want the best. I want the absolute top notch. And I don't mean best in the industry, because I do think IM is great. I think it's great. But I want what's best for our students. This data, these 7 key features, and it goes on. I've got this whole knowledge thing that we have on the readiness, which talks about teachers understand and are well prepared. How did IM score? That there's some promising elements exist, but we're mixed with major gaps in knowledge or confidence. I don't feel comfortable moving forward with a curriculum that's the kind of buy-in we have from our teachers. So this idea that, thank you, sir, that the data is inconclusive, because that's what it came out, you know, it looks pretty conclusive to me. I mean, here's the thing. I get that this is the hot new thing that everyone's doing, right? Los Angeles Unified District is developing it, 2023. All 400-plus New York City high schools are picking up IM. But this sort of reminds me of the pitch that was made with Chromebooks. You know, a decade, maybe a little over a decade ago, everybody went to Chromebooks, and that turned out to be a big flop, and we're moving away. So, and again, I don't know what the answer is, but I am tired of teaching to a test. The idea is, well, IM is good because Missouri Learning, the MAP test is a lot more word problems than it had before. But maybe we could just take a deep breath, back off on K5 or K3, K4, I don't know, pick the first 3, K2. Can we just get addition and subtraction under our belts and not worry about the test and just try to get this focus on the basics for the very early years. And for that reason, and again, I'm not trying to dig at IM, Ms. Bruner. I'm not trying to say that IM is not a good curriculum. I'm just trying to figure out if it's a good curriculum for our students at this time. Not, maybe it's the best curriculum 5 years from now. right? Once we get our literacy and we get the foundations there. Maybe it's the best thing a sixth grader could walk into. We're seeing some of those numbers moving. I'm talking about K-5 right now. Can we, board, take a deep breath and just give ourselves a little bit more time? And I realize that we have a motion on the table, but I'd like to make a motion to table this decision for this near $500,000 ask, not because I don't want workbooks, but I think that there's a lot of workbooks in closets. If you go and check, a lot of teachers didn't use them. They just didn't use them because they didn't think it worked. Can we just think about this a little bit more and have some consideration for making a minor shift? Maybe just in K1, 2? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I just want to have an opportunity to take a breath.
Okay, there's been a motion to table this particular motion.
To January.
To the January meeting. Is there a second? Seeing no second.
Second.
Second from Board Member Byrne. Is there any further discussion on tabling this motion?
We already heard about the need for, developing the curriculum guides to go along with these materials. I think it's a bad idea to force our teams to have to wait in order for us to make a decision. I think it's something that we need to do now.
Any further discussion on the motion to table?
These are materials for next school year, correct? 24, 25?
Correct.
Right. So what's the timeline on?
I thought that this vote was going to come to us in January. My understanding, just like the benchmark advance, my understanding was the curriculum ask, and I've asked this in emails because it kept getting pushed because, we have the Democrat, we have a lot of important things to talk about, except I should point out that we spent 4 meetings talking about 2 USDA policies. We should have been talking about this. We should have been talking about curriculum. This is the meat and guts of what I think we should be doing. But we wasted a whole heck of a lot of time talking about things that don't impact our students every single day in their classrooms and their ability to learn math. And so I don't think it's a big ask that we wait 1 more month.
What is the timeline to purchase these and have them in hand?
So that's the reason for the request is as we purchase items for the next school year, being able to get them in time and be prepared as we think about ordering. And so this was just part of the renewals of consumables. The question about voting in January was based on the presentation tonight. Would it be in 2 parts? The presentation tonight of the new adoption materials and then the board voting on those items in January. So that was the original plan. This was a part of the regular KCOB that was asked to be removed.
I don't personally know what's going to change between now and our January meeting with regards to selecting and a different curriculum or materials or whatever. So this is what we have. We need to give the teachers what they need in order to support them in the classroom to teach this curriculum that we have.
Any further discussion on the motion to table?
Yeah, I don't know that I had an answer to my question yet. If this was delayed till January, is this going to keep us from getting these materials in time next year?
We don't know. We had a timeline for the things that we needed to order, and honestly speaking, we won't be coming back with a different recommendation or any changes. This is part of our plan, and just going back even 2 years ago when we started discussion on curriculum adoption, moving to an annual process to evaluate curriculum. So the things that the previous board and current board members asked us to do, we've been doing it on an ongoing process.
I guess what I'm asking for, maybe a month would give us enough time to keep with Illustrative Math, a digital platform, but re-looking to see exactly how many, putting a survey out, walking to these classrooms, opening up their closets and seeing exactly how many workbooks they used. Because I think you're going to be surprised at workbooks that weren't used. And then maybe supplementing it for next year with a consumable. I don't know. I'm sure they're out there. Maybe pick up Singapore. Maybe have 2 curriculums, something for them to take home that the parents can do with them. I mean, 2 + 2 = 4. These parents want to partner with us. They want to be a part of this. And I just, for the life of me, can't understand when we tell the kids the Chromebooks can't go home, then how are they supposed to do math, right? Because their teachers are going to be printing things, because those workbooks are
Board Member
worthless.
Mohammed Khani, we're on the motion to table. Are there any other comments on the motion to table?
Well, I was answering Mr. Burns. This gives the district an opportunity to come in with a supplemental ask along with this.
Well, this is relevant to my decision on this. I wasn't thinking we were going to be voting on tabling this item tonight, so I'm trying to figure some things out. I was under the impression that a workbook is a consumable. Is it not? Okay, so what do you mean? What are you looking for other than
A workbook, a consumable that says, here's the lesson. It's like a textbook that's soft that the pages can tear out, or even a textbook that's not soft that can go home.
Is that a workbook, though?
Not the illustrative math workbooks. They don't show step-by-step instruction or examples.
You're looking for something that'll bridge the gap between the classroom and the household, that can go home, that's not a Chromebook, because we don't want to send those home.
Nope, we don't.
That
That shows the
can be more
parents
helpful with
how to
students.
teach. Yes,
That-
or
so-
kids that are behind can work on their own. Kind of like when you go to Barnes & Noble, there's a whole lot of math books, math for
Okay,
first grade,
Any other
second grade.
comments on the motion to table?
That's what we're discussing.
The motion to table?
Yes, so my question, again, I'm trying to gather information as I'm making a decision to table this. Do any other materials exist that can help bridge that gap? Because I do think she makes a valid point on helping, just like the speaker said tonight, we've got to be able to help if the kids that are going to be successful generally have some sort of help at home, and we got to be able to provide that, bridge that gap.
That's not what this
Is there anything else? And I think that's what she's getting at, 'cause this factors
Yes,
into this.
I'm tabling, because this is a huge financial
Hold on.
commitment.
This factors into the decision when we're deciding on $500,000. Could those resources be used on something else that better helps bridge that gap? Does anything exist with Desmos or whatever we're on, IM, that
So-
would better help us bridge that gap?
Dr. Majors and Whitney left, but we're not making a recommendation to change the curriculum. As you're asking for, as it relates to interventions are built in, there are opportunities around resources. This is one component of that. And just between now and January 16th, that will not change to say, don't use all these resources that teachers and students have been utilizing. We've invested the training in, and we're providing the support. Providing supports and resources around intervention are separate from this main math curriculum. And so I don't know if you're both asking the same question.
Dr. Lathan, with all due respect, IM is a digital platform. They came in with the workbooks because of the outcry, because it was simply unacceptable to just teach kids on the Chromebooks, right? I mean, that's because that's not how IM started, right? IM started without workbooks. That came later. But what I'm asking is, we can be true and we can have fidelity to the curriculum on the Chromebooks in the classroom. But then what we send home, I've looked at these workbooks. They're worthless. It's just like 5 problems, but it doesn't give you a step-by-step instruction. And this is all the way through algebra, geometry. Can we, instead of buying, we can have IM curriculum, but maybe the resource, the printed material, can be something else so that our teachers aren't constantly printing homework, right? Like, get a workbook that actually has homework, that shows step by step for the kids that are behind, for the kids that miss school. Can we come up with a better consumable to piggyback onto illustrative math other than K-5 IM workbooks? That's what I'm trying to get to, Mr. Byrne.
And that's what I'm asking is, does it exist? Because we're talking about making a $500,000 decision here, and my question is around the validity of that decision. And I'm not asking to rework IM or rework this whole curriculum adoption process. I'm just asking, as it pertains to us spending $500,000 on a resource to best teach this, what options are there?
Right. And so when you think about a different resource as opposed to these consumables, you are changing it. However, Dr. Majors, if you have something different to add, please feel free. But when you change and take away the resource that's attached to the curriculum, then you are asking for something different. And as I understand what you mean by the step-by-step, but part of the consumables provides that resource for students and for students, and then they take it home and utilize it.
Yeah, so just to clarify, we will begin program evaluation for K-5 math this winter.
I get that.
Right.
But do you know how many thousands of students are going to be in class next year, missing out a whole year?
So for further clarification, the digital platform, Imagine Learning Classroom, and the workbooks come together. The workbooks are to utilize in the classroom alongside the instruction, not as homework. So that the workbooks are to be done in class. So it's a part of the curriculum. So Galileo doesn't separate. You get the workbooks with the digital purchase. And so it's a package deal.
So-
You can't buy one or the other.
So this is to be used in the classroom?
Yes.
So I guess what I need to do is get on my hands and knees and grovel for us to find money somewhere to buy something to go home for the kids that need additional work, that need practice, so that our teachers aren't spending all their time at the copier, all those supplements that you guys are uploading that then they have to go into, right? Because that's the tab you're creating. You are enriching this program because you've realized that IM is not enough, right? There's gaps. Like every textbook out there is going to have gaps too. So maybe instead of asking our teachers and burdening them with constantly printing homework and printing resources, maybe we could do this and then piggyback with something else so that it makes their lives easier and it gives parents a hand in the education and support for their students. Is that a consideration?
Yeah, so K-5 program evaluation begins in January. So all of that will be considered within the evaluation. So the reteach and intervention lessons, we know that every student doesn't learn the same way. Some kids are further ahead than others. So those lessons aren't to supplement Tier 1 instruction. Those are to reteach and intervene.
I don't care what you call it. Call it Tier 2. Can we get some workbooks to send home with these kids that tells them how to do it? Maybe another way?
That's something the curriculum team is happy to look into.
Okay, because I don't think that we need to wait till 25, 26 is what it sounds like. I mean, I know things move slow, but I think we could do a little bit better. I know we can do better.
Yeah, so
Been a motion to table item 9.01. Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
I will
before we
remove
take
my
a-
motion off the table.
You're removing your
I'm
motion?
removing my
Okay,
motion.
motion's been removed. There's still a pending motion that the board approve the K-5 illustrative mathematics purchase for the 24-25 school year as presented. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this item?
I have a couple of questions, and it can be directed to Dr. Lathan or Dr. Majors, either one. Do you believe that the workbooks will help students learn math concepts?
yes, so without purchasing the workbooks, that is a part of the curriculum. So if we don't purchase the workbooks, then the teachers will have to, they won't have the platform to deliver the instruction because they're not separate.
Do
It
you
is the
believe,
curriculum.
do you believe that the recommendation to make this purchase at this time has been done in good faith and with good information?
So I can tell you, if my team were here, they could tell you the multiple times I've asked them the exact same question. So one thing that we did is we inventoried every single classroom. We actually went over to GSC and hand counted every single workbook that we had, because when they brought this to me originally, it was $100,000 more. And since then, IM has cut at least $150,000 more off of the original quote. So one thing that we did is our curriculum team sent an email to every single principal, and our instructional coaches went into the classrooms and physically counted the workbooks, because it would not be fiscally responsible to purchase more if they are sitting in closets. And we do know that.
Can I ask you, what did you find them sitting in closets?
I can't answer that specifically right now, but we did not find as many as we thought we would.
You've answered my question, my two questions. That you believe this will help increase student learning related to mathematics, correct?
I do.
Okay. And you believe that recommendation is coming to us as a school board in good faith and with good information from a variety of sources?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. That's what I needed.
I do have a clarifying question on just exactly what this is. So this was something we planned for all along, was to have these workbooks, and we're just having to go through procedurally and approved the contract?
Yeah, so initially when this curriculum was approved, they approved it for a 3-year adoption period. So we have a gap year with the new processes. We want to evaluate curriculum every 4th year. So next year is a gap year. We signed a 3-year contract, so we have to sign a contract for 1 year to get us through until we evaluate the curriculum.
So this is consistent with what we did for the last 3 years?
Yes.
And we're extending that 1 more year, which gets us into a new cycle to review. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And I have one last comment. I want to thank the board for listening to me, as you said, Mrs. Bruner, in good faith. And I feel that I have received that. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will vote.
Could you state the motion again, please?
Yes, the motion is that the board approve the K-5 illustrative mathematics purchase for the 24-25 school year as presented. Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to item 9.02, transportation bus purchase. The recommended action is that the board approve the bid from Midwest Transit Equipment as presented. Providing any information, okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Second from Board Member Mohammed Khani. Any discussion on this item?
I do have a question. You can go ahead.
I think last year we approved some buses with propane, I thought. But now we're going, these have diesel. Can you just, I guess, provide some clarification there on, I guess, how that's going? Are we just still waiting to see, I guess, collecting data
Yeah,
to
so
see if that's the new way?
we're still early on in the evaluation of the propane. The current line that we use, which is international, did not produce propane buses this year. They actually won't be producing anymore until 2027, which is why we didn't, those 2 reasons we didn't have propane on this particular bid was because 1, they didn't produce it, and 2, we still need more time to evaluate the miles per gallon, the usability, the maintenance, all of those things to determine is that the true value that we need to continue to purchasing more propane.
Did we invest something in the actual infrastructure we have for the propane?
It was, yeah, it was a small investment. It was part of our capital budget that we knew we would need to do. So yeah, around the tank and some electrical that was at the main lot.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
So we currently have the propane buses that we currently have?
We have 4 of them, yes.
4, okay. And the goal was previously,
well, we need to evaluate them because we've never used them, so we want to make sure that they're doing what they
okay, got
claim
it. So
that they will
we're
do.
making these purchases in the meantime?
Correct, because we
Okay.
need to continue to
Got
add
it.
to our fleet every single year and replace so that we can keep the age of our fleet down.
I have a question because we received an update in executive content. Will this remain executive content?
No, that shouldn't have been that, sorry. No, that was actually, when we had our one-on-one last week.
What was this
that
supposed to-
should-
Okay, got
no,
it.
should not be
I still
there.
have a question, though. Okay,
Okay.
so thank you. I wanted to be careful. So our current radius for elementary and K-8s is 1.5 miles, and for middle school and high school is 2.5 miles, correct?
Yes.
Well, I guess are we reducing that radius by half a mile?
No change, there are no changes.
There are
to
no
changes, to the rate, reducing the radius.
Okay, and the start times will remain the same? Everything will remain the same?
Correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more quick question. If we're adding new buses, we're phasing some out, do you immediately just get rid of the old buses, or do you keep them in case because
we don't get rid of any buses until we get the new ones in.
Right, but even once we get the new ones in, there's been some information provided to us about if we tried to make any changes to our start times or tiers, that we would need an investment of more buses.
Right. We have a surplus of buses right now. If we were to vastly expand, then yes, we're going to have to buy more buses. But they get to a certain age where they're not beneficial for us to keep at that age. So we do need to recycle them out. It's like,
So
because
as we're
most of
continuing-
we don't want to have buses any older than about 16 years, and that's generally speaking the age of the buses that we cycle out.
The reason I'm asking is because as we're continuing to monitor this three-tier system and the start times associated with that, if we were to try to adjust that, the recommendation was that it would require a purchase up front of some more buses.
That's correct.
Could we stretch that out longer if we kept some of these buses to blunt that initial purchase?
We could. They would be, again, a very old bus.
Well, they're being used this year, right? Buses that are being used this year, we could just not sell for a year or two in case
I would say
something
the
changes.
buses that we sell on Gov Deals are buses that are sitting in our lot and are only used sparingly. They're not buses that we have on a regular route every day. They are the spares that are the only used in the event that something breaks down and we have to use them. Those are the ones that we replace out. So to then put them back out on routes would not be our preference.
Okay.
So are you saying that we have spares, we're going to sell the spares, and then the old buses become the spare buses when
That's
these four
correct.
get here?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will vote. Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to item 10.01, Man Elementary sanitary sewer easement. The recommended action is that the board authorize and approve granting a sanitary sewer easement to the city of Springfield, 15 feet in width in the area adjacent to Man Elementary School where the sewer line was relocated.
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate, second from Board Member Kreis. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll vote. Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to item 10.02, change orders and agreements. The recommended action is that the board approve the change orders and agreements as presented. Are there any further questions or discussion? Suppose I need to take the motion first.
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you. Board Member Kreis. Second.
Second.
Board Member Thomas Tate.
I didn't catch that. Who motion?
Board Member Kreis made the motion. Okay, any questions? We will vote. Motion carries 6-0. Moving back to item number 8.03, Dr. Holt will be joining us.
Oh, Tammy, I don't see it now. I see those two presentations, but I do not see mine. Tammy, she can't hear me. I don't see mine anymore unless it got moved to the desktop. Oh, look at that, it's hiding. There we go. All right. Good evening, board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about the annual performance report and updated MSIP 6 information. So we will roll through. Here is the agenda for this evening. Obviously, we will start with a reminder about how this work is aligned with not only Dr. Lathan's goals, but also the strategic plan. The first several slides, I'll move very quickly through. It's background information that was presented to you last spring, but just wanted it here for your reference as you've seen the presentation ahead of time. We'll spend a lot of time in the data. I won't say a lot. We'll spend some time in the data tonight and then talk about how that impacts the current and future work that we have going on in our system. So again, here's the purpose of this very first section, just to reacquaint you with MSIP 6, or the Missouri School Improvement Program, as well as talk a little bit and a reminder about how the APR reports are scored. So again, nothing exists in our system without direct alignment to the 4 priorities of our strategic plan, which you are very familiar with. Much of this lives in success-ready students. Here is a brief reminder about Dr. Lathan's superintendent goals, which obviously are all of our goals on the executive leadership team as well as in the system. This really lives in the heart of objective 1.1 and 1.3 with relationship to increased percentage of proficiency, as well as how our academic and behavioral expectations for students support the work of achievement. So again, these next several slides are ones that you saw last spring, but we received our Republic release of this second year of MSIP 6 on December 18th yesterday. A reminder, last year was baseline, and accreditation status for districts across the state will occur based on this last year of data that we are currently in, so the 2023-24 school year. So no changes to status officially until 24-25. And again, a high point is that calculations for APR give credit for moving students within an achievement level. That was a huge shift of MSIP 6. Before that, we only got points for moving out of levels. This gives movement within. This slide is also one that was presented to you before, and it really gives you the key overviews of moving out of MSIP 5 and into MSIP 6. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about the first one, with 70% of our points coming from performance and 30% from continuous improvement. And several of the other MSIP 6 items are featured there for you again. Again, just a reminder. Because you're going to see on our APR sheet student group, we wanted to remind you of who that is that we're talking about. Used to be called subgroup, now it's called student group, and you can see the 5 categories that are included in that group when we look at the data. Here's another way to view how APR reports and MSIP 6 are aligned really with relationship to the standards. So we have 2 buckets, performance and continuous improvement. You can see what lives within each of those, as well as this idea that we are always working in collaboration with DESE around identifying best practice. And while those items are not scored, DESE does give us guidance to support districts as they work through improvement. So again, public release was yesterday. The board has seen this as well as our community and our internal stakeholders. Here is a snippet from our district APR. So you can see that total points of 75.5, which is up from 73.3 last year. We don't get an accreditation status until the end of next year, But if we did, you can see where we would fall on the accreditation levels listed on the screen. Here is that first front half of the APR, noticing the delineations between status and growth for the academic areas assessed, as well as the metrics included for success-ready students. So key highlights are going to be that overall our performance remained stable from 22 to 23. We increased 5 points in advanced credit, which you see there, putting us at the max of 10 points. Again, our 4-year grad rate continues to get full points, and we also got full points on graduation follow-up with a previous score of 3 in the prior year. This is the continuous improvement side of the district APR. Again, you see how points are allocated. All that you see on the screen was work that districts really were already doing, minus some of the kindergarten assessment, ICAP attendance, CTE expansion. But all of those other pieces were things we already did that we now are getting honored and credit for as a part of continuous improvement. So districts have historically had improvement plans, but now DESE is looking at those per district. We are giving responses to those, and they are eventually scoring and giving points on those that go into our total APR. So we'll spend a little bit of time in the next couple of slides. While that was a district snapshot that you just saw, now we'll move through some slides that speak specific to building level APR. Again, I'll remind you, districts receive accreditation status or designation. Individual schools do not. But here is one slide of our elementary schools. What you'll notice is we gave you FRL because sometimes questions come about where are those buildings' current FRL. Then you can see the APR from FY22 compared to 23, and the change is noted in the furthest column. So this is the first slide of elementary. Slide 2 of elementary. And slide 3. And then we'll move to our middle and K-8 campuses. You'll note those APRs for our K-8s come both as an elementary school and as a middle school. And last but not least, our high school campuses. So in totality, more than 50% of our schools grew with relationship to points earned from 2022 to 2023. So the next section really focuses on our actual MAP and EOC results, right? So that was APR. This is the data that led into the roll-up of that. We're going to look at it obviously by division. You're going to see the percent proficient or advanced. We also have provided the historical and comparison to the state. So those batches of kids, how did they compare to kids across the state? We also provided this year an additional layer of comparison to similar school districts. Okay, so that doesn't mean necessarily those right around us in our region. It's going to be those with similar demographics and similar enrollments across the state. We'll provide some subgroup data as well as give you the opportunity tonight to hear from a couple building spotlights. So I'll thank in advance those administrators for taking their entire evening to be here with us for this presentation. They'll be up in just a minute. So what you see first is our MAP data in the content area of ELA. The top is grades 3 through 5. The bottom is grades 6 through 8. The lines are both the state data of students scoring proficient or advanced, percentage of students scoring proficient or advanced, and the district line is in blue. So slightly underperforming compared to the state in grades 3-5, but we are consistently outperforming the state in grades 6 through 8. So that's MAP ELA. Again, same layout of the slide by grade divisions, but the content area here is math. So an upward trend in 3-5, which is following the state line, but we are still underperforming according to the state. And we're continuing to trend up in grades 6-8 and are outperforming the state according to the 2023 data. Here is the MAP assessment for science. Again, that's not a band of grades. That is just 2 grade levels that we assess, grade 5 and grade 8. So 2021, we've been on a positive upward trend and barely lagging the state in grade 5. And we're seeing a slight dip for grade 8 from the prior year compared to the state. And then we move to EOC data. Again, this is our high school data here. What you see on the screen is ELA, which is English 2, the EOC for English 2, as well as science, which the EOC is biology, and then social studies, the EOC is government. So biology dip in 2021 and have maintained, but are lower than the state, which is displaying obviously a more positive trend. English 2 following the state trend line, which is declining, and the same is true for government. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry are the EOCs assessed in the area of math. So while we are lagging behind the state in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, you see a significant gain happening, upwards of 10 points in Algebra 2. Still lagging behind the state. A reminder about geometry. We don't test every student that takes geometry. This is really those students that are on an advanced math pathway, meaning they would have taken Algebra 1 in their middle school time. This in for this geometry assessment, or geometry EOC, was 36 students, and they were all Central Scholars students. We continue to celebrate the hard work of our high school leaders, our high school teachers, our high school support staff in the district graduation rate. 4 consecutive years of the highest graduation rate in the district's history, and another year of celebrating the highest graduating class at SPS. That is no accident. There is tons of intention that has gone behind this work, and we continue to be really proud of not only what happens at our high school, but all the work we know that leads up to a student crossing the finish line at graduation. So another way to view the data is to break it down by grade level and content area. So this is the same ELA, MAP, and EOC data, but it's listed in table form. It's going to show you trend from 2019 through 2023, but by grade level. So you can see how that performance has shifted. So here are all the grades that we assess, or EOCs that we assess in the specific content area of ELA. Again, this is students scoring proficient or advanced. Here's the same information, but for the content area of math. So in most grade levels, we saw growth from 22 to 23. Again, students in grades 6, 8 performing above the state average here. 6th grade math, and in a moment, you'll see Algebra 2, which I talked about earlier, saw significant increases. Here is the Science and Social Studies MAP and EOC data. So again, not all grade levels tested, but our 5th, 8th, and then our biology EOC. And then government. Again, just in a different format. We also take a look at our data related to our student group, which was prior called subgroup. So we have broken that out here for you and displayed it again in that same pattern of year. So from 2019 through the 2023 assessment period, how those in our student group are performing. So this ELA map is for grades 3 through 8. So I'll note here, and you'll see it again on several other slides, we saw significant growth in math, ELA, and science for our English language learners across the board. Here is math, same student groups. We saw increases to all student groups from 2022 to 2023 for the area of math. And finally, science. A new addition to our data, while we typically have kept this information internal, we thought it was worth noting how we compared to districts across the state that look like us. Again, I'll remind you, this is about demographics and it's about enrollment. Okay, so it's not necessarily about those closest to us in our region. So when we look at FY23 data, the percent proficient or advanced, and the change from the prior year's APR compared to districts that look like us, we are not only outperforming the state in ELA, but also comparable peer districts. Here's the same comparison, but for the area of math. Again, performing better than our comparable districts, but below the state. And then overall APR percentage. So the total percentage of points we received, again, ranking second when you compare us to districts that look like SPS. So a new feature to our presentation tonight on APR, but not new when we think about how we present data in the system, is to give you an opportunity to hear from leaders in the field. So as we looked at the data around our table, it became very clear that we had some buildings, well, all buildings are doing great work, let me just say. It might not be reflected in 1 year of data, but we have teachers in every building, principals leading on every campus who are doing amazing work, and that's showing up in our data. But we wanted to spotlight these 3 buildings. So Missy Ramsey, the principal at Roundtree, Kim Yeary, the principal at PVK8. She's going to feature elementary data today, but she does serve the whole campus. And then Dana Powers, the principal at Carver, are going to just share a little bit about their data and talk to you about how they've really moved metrics with relationship to not only our internal assessments, but the state assessments. So Misty, if you want to join me. So here is Roundtree's APR summary. What you see on the screen is her APR data from 22, which again, that was our baseline year. And then you can see the shifts for 2023. So again, that's the total performance and continuous improvement. So a significant jump in her APR at the building level. Then we break that down and show you what it looks like on her performance totals. So the bottom being where they were at baseline, and you can see the movement. She may talk to that a little bit in a moment. And then again, just speaking to that 5-year testing trend specific to Roundtree. So I'll let Misty share a little bit and step out of the way for a moment.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me tonight to reflect and celebrate on the growth that we have encountered at Roundtree. This is really, I'm the face of the hardworking teachers that are doing the work. And if they're still up watching, remember it's pajama day tomorrow, so
you're welcome.
You're welcome. They were really excited. I shared these slides with them this afternoon at a staff meeting to celebrate them in person so that they could hear it from me first. Some of the big takeaways were the growth in ELA and in science, and then also that move to above the state average as well on the overall mathematics growth. So we are just super stoked that I think I heard someone say today that our work is coming to fruition and we're seeing the fruits of our labor. We have been super intentional in our time around the table, me in partnership with their work, to really break down standards and to say what are we really hoping that we see observed from students' performance? How are we really monitoring? Are we meeting our goals as teachers? Are we allowing our students every aspect of the learning to take place? And are we really enriching every single person in the room? Coming back to those elements and those questions to really consider what are our next steps, what are our interventions, what is needed, and how can we meet our students' needs. So the conversation has really been awesome, especially as partnering with them in the work to see them think critically about what we want to see in our students, and then to go in the classroom and watch them put that into action is just really joyful for me as a leader to see my excellent educators at work. And then I'll just go back. This is also a really great slide as well. So 2019 was my first year at Roundtree. This is my 5th year here, and that was the year that we closed at COVID, for COVID. So just the recovery that we've been able to make in the time spent is also a celebration. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Okay, while Kim's coming up, I'll showcase the same data here. Lots to celebrate at PV Elementary. We'll say the whole school because that's only fair to your middle school people. But here again, her APR card from the baseline year and this year, significant increase to that score. And then here is the same data for their performance totals. So noting significant shifts to being on track and above average. And then her 5-year trend. So Kim, share some things that are working at PD.
I don't know if I can follow Misty's jacket, but much of what she said, I have an amazing team. We've had a shift in some of our teachers over the last couple of years, and we really have a team now that just melds, and they work really hard together. One of the shifts that we've made, I think, in the elementary is that now we're very, very cognizant about keeping the conversation about how we are intervening with our students and what we're doing with the data that we bring to really move forward with the instruction, rather than getting caught in the muck and the mire sometimes of just children's lovely behavior. So we've been very focused on that. They collaborate in teams of K2. We are very small, so we don't have more than one teacher. But they have figured out that, good teaching is good teaching. So when we talk about how we got one student from here to, from A to B, we share strategies, we share the way that we write the assessment, we look at the standards, we break those all down together. So again, I work with an amazing team that's worked really, really hard to get these scores.
Thank you. And last but not least, I'll invite Dana Powers up to talk about Carver's data, another huge celebration. You can see her APR from 22 to 23. Again, significant increase. And then her performance totals from baseline year to now. And then her 5-year trend. So Dana, talk about your leadership strategy specifically. I didn't tell the others anything specifically, but I want you to talk about yours.
I'm a little nervous. So I thank you for having me here in this really lovely evening. I'm very thankful to be here. Sweating a little bit, but I don't have a sparkly jacket, but I think we will now call Dr. Major, we will now call Misty Ramsey Sparkles. Yeah. So I believe that would be her new name for it. So we're really, thank you for letting me be here, but we are really proud of our team, and we did not share this yet because I wasn't sure if we should share it with the entire. So we will be sharing this with our staff, but I did share it with a few people, key people that I wanted to know because they have been doing the hard work, and I am so proud of our team. It's really a team effort, but it is driven by our teachers, and it really is. I heard the discussions earlier, and I honor you for those discussions, but our teachers are doing the things that you're saying. They really are. They are looking at the data. They are deciding what strategies to use, and then they are trying to make sure that we have offered all those interventions. And we are trying to really hard partner with our parents, because I believe in that too. Like, our parents need to be doing this with our kids at home. And so we really do those things that you were talking about. I was like, yes, we do that. Yes, we're doing that. Yes, we're doing that. And I think our data is showing it. We're really proud of our academic status of ELA on track. We are so close to being at the top tier. And I actually invited my ELA teacher here because I wanted her to hear just how exciting this is for us. We're really proud of our growth status in all of our 4 categories. We are above average. So what we talked about all year last year was saying every student, every time, we have got to work every day to move those kids, no matter where they start. By the end of the year, they better be twice as better, like their score better improve twice or 3 times or 4 times. And we're seeing that by being above average in all 4 of those categories. And that is amazing. And I definitely shared it with our math teacher too. We're very excited about math because our MAP scores in all 3 grade levels improved, every grade level. And we had an overall building improvement of 9%. And that is really something to talk about when you're talking about that level, that number of kids to move all of them. So we're very excited about that. I think she wanted me to talk about leadership, and I will tell you that my teacher probably sitting back there will probably grimace because we have been really focused in our PLTs, and our PLT is the 2 8th grade ELA teachers, the 2 8th grade math teachers, the 2 8th grade science teachers, the 2 8th grade social studies teachers, and that's in every grade level. So we've got 12 PLTs, and I am in their business all the time, probably more than they want me in there. They're like, oh, here she comes. Oh, she's going to want to know about data. She's going to know what standards we're working on. She's going to know how pacing is going, because I'm like, we are partners. They are working together. The 2 math teachers, the 2 ELA teachers are talking, this is the standard. What does that really mean? That's really complex. What does that mean? Here's what our curriculum is doing. What else do we need to do? And they do have the agility to say this strategy is going to be best. Let's do that. This next class may not be that strategy because they're a little bit more talkative, so a little bit rowdier. We're going to try this strategy. And then we ask them to come back, take some checks for understanding real fast during the class. If kids aren't getting it in the middle of the class, stop. Stop what you're doing with Desmos and start over. Do something. What are we doing? We can't just keep teaching if they're not getting it. So that is an agility that we are trying to promote during our PLT. One of the other things that I think that we are probably focusing on is the urgency that we have when we are talking about data doing assessments, doing the standards. It's bell-to-bell instruction. I'm walking down the hallway. I do not want to see anybody lining up at the door 5 minutes early. We are bell-to-bell instruction. And we are going to have the objective on the board. We have urgency about kids need to know what they have, like at the end of this class, how will I know what I've learned? How will I know if I've been successful? So we talk about success criteria. Our teachers not only look at the standard and talk about what it is, but they're trying to tell kids, this is what we need you to learn by the end of today, by the end of this week. And then we're going to go back and look at our data. And most of our teachers put their data on the board by class and say, 69% is not getting it. What are we going to do? And so not only doing that part, but then I walk in the classroom. I'm a part of their PLTs, more than they probably want. I'm a part of their PLTs. I walk in the classroom. I know where you're supposed to be. I have this great resource that our district has provided, and we're using it. Like, this is the standard. This is the pacing. We shouldn't be 2 weeks behind what's going on at Cherokee. We don't have time to do that. We've got to keep moving, but yet do your check for understanding, because if your kids aren't moving along with you, then we got to stop in the middle of that class, start over, do tier 1 again, and don't just do it again. Do it in a different strategy. What else can we supplement with? What else can we do? It's that agility for our teachers. So I could go on forever if you wanted, because I was like, oh, I wanted to stand up and come over and talk when you were Dr. Major's calling me. She probably is telling me to be quiet right now. So, but our teachers are doing those things, and we have a fantastic staff. They care, and they show up. And sometimes we look at our data and we cry. And our teachers that would show up here tonight would tell you, sometimes we look at it and we go, that is not where we want to be. But we are doing the work every day, and I cannot say how much proud. I know that they said their staff has nothing. Like, come to Carver. And some of you have been there. Come to Carver. We'll show it to you. We don't mind showing it to you. So,
thank you. Oh, give her a round, Dana. Look at that. Okay, so what I hope you heard from all of them, A, is not only just the intention and the passion around, but their engagement and involvement, right? This is a partnership with teachers, and when leaders are knowledgeable about the standards, they've received the training, they know what to watch and look for when they go into classrooms, that's how a partnership is birthed. Not just because I told you so or the district said, but because I'm in this with you to help educate the kids the best we can. And so I appreciate your time, I appreciate your commitment to students and to teachers, and thank you for being here tonight. So can we all give them a round? Okay, so we've had some data, we've had some building spotlights, so now what are we doing, right? So I want to acknowledge that much of what I'm going to share is current work. So this is work that's been in place, and we're continuing to tweak, to fine tune, to do things differently, to ask questions, to innovate, to change. But we are centering everything on the utilization of data. That's how we know what decisions to make. We are intervening at high levels in certain places, so we'll talk about that. And you heard them say, I am in teachers' classrooms at a higher rate and degree than I have been in any other time in my leadership journey. And so what impact does that have, and how is that supporting the work of achievement for students? So you know that we had a structural shift, and we have executive directors of schools now. And so I always, anytime I can, want to highlight the good work that they are doing in schools. So this was data as of end of day last Friday, so right before I PDF'd this puppy and sent it to you, board, 473 site visits. So my math people are already adding up all the totals I have below and saying, Nicole, that equals more than 473. You are correct, it does, because my EDs can select more than one conversation topic that they're having on a campus, and honestly should be. But when they selected those, the frequency is the number that you're seeing. So you can see where the majority of their conversations have lived as they've been on campuses the majority of their first semester. They know that I expect, and Dr. Lathan expects, their work to live in instructional leadership. No longer are principals managers on campuses. Do they manage what's happening on their campus? Yes, but we have supported them and given them resources to take the harness of instructional leadership and make sure that they are holding people accountable to doing the work in classrooms. And so when we see this data, it is encouraging to me because they are doing the hard work and it's showing up here. So we want to honor that we made a shift to provide an instructional coach to every campus. That is new work, and we want to note that to date, again, last week, 7,425 hours of coaching have occurred across SPS. The primary thing that we're collecting data on our coaches, we've never done that in the way that we're doing it now before, so we can see what the return on that investment is. They are living, their conversations are breathing in the PLT process. She was joking that I was going to have the 4 guiding questions. No, I don't have them listed, but yep, here they are. So she was right. It is true. That is where they start. So what is happening in your PLT? How are those conversations going? And are you living in the 4 questions? Because if you're not talking about the right things. And you heard them say, our conversations are focused on instruction. We reserve other time to talk about the management things, but when you come to a PLT, it is focused on academic data, period. And they spend a lot of time planning for instruction. So that looks like co-planning with teachers. That looks like heavy on our support for early career teachers. So that's how our coaches are spending the majority of their time as we walk out of first semester. Again, I'd be remiss to highlight the opportunities that we have to be with our teachers in a district format that's more formal to provide them the rich learning that they need. These are some screenshots from our Teach Forward session that occurred in November. We got a lot of feedback and asked a lot of questions about what they needed next, and that's what we provided. So we gave an initial layer of clarity on our essential standards that the district rolled out, and calibration around district common formative assessments, which were new to our teachers and our campuses this year. Lots of rich, Dana said it, sometimes not happy conversations about student proficiency, and that's part of the work. Like, we grapple with what we're seeing and we don't always agree, but that's how we come to better calibration and consensus. And so giving them the opportunity to do a little bit of that with the support of our curriculum team was helpful as we begin to dive in these conversations around proficiency. And then we launched some conversation into proficiency scales. So how does that support where our students are headed and knowing where to go next? So that was a half a day of learning that we provided to all of the district in November. You heard me talk earlier about intervention. So we have identified our campuses that are in higher need of support from a district perspective, leaders that we want to walk beside, campuses that we want to wrap our arms around and say, how do we support you with helping your students achieve at higher levels? And that looked for the first time like comprehensive school visits and support. And so a small militia of district leadership came to our bottom 5% and comprehensive campuses with the sheer goal of saying, where are you at with your BSIPs and your action steps? And let's take a walk around your campus. So let's engage in an instructional round and let's talk about what we saw when we went into a variety of classrooms. The most rich part of those conversations was after we came back together to talk with the leaders and the coaches on that campus and the assistant principals and say, now what are you going to do? So here's what we observed, and of all the things that we observed, what is the next right action step for you and your teams? And not just that, because it's more than just identifying it, and what teams and departments do you need to make move on your metrics? Right, so those are, that's work that we do quarterly. So we've already done those for the first quarter and we will be beginning to engage in those for the second quarter. So this is intensive levels of support that we're providing to our campuses most at need. While it doesn't necessarily have a label of academics, I think we will all agree that how our the positive classroom framework that we set up impacts a student's ability to attain academic achievement at high levels. And so we had an opportunity to engage with Dr. John Hannigan in person for a full day training for all principals in the district. And that was just a couple weeks ago. And so this was really about
a check pulse on the implementation of PBIS and how that folds into the RTI model that we have for academics. So we teach behaviors, or should be teaching behaviors, a lot like we do academics. And so Dr. Hannigan is a notable author and speaker in the field, and he took time to be with us. And principals walked away with a lot of valuable steps, and really saying, my teachers need this information, so how are we going to provide this to them? So wanted to note that that definitely is work that we're doing that we know impacts our students' ability to learn in classrooms across the district every day. Effective supervision. So you heard our principals talk about it. You've heard us talk about it. But just to recount, we are only as good as the coaching and feedback that we are providing to teachers in their classroom every day. And so it has been a priority that we give leaders the tools they need to be having conversations with teachers about what's happening in their classroom. We started the year with a reboot to evaluation, and that led to consistent expectations for observations of certified staff. And that is higher than the threshold of what we have required in the past. So we told leaders that you need to be in your teachers' classrooms once a quarter, period, no matter where they are in their tenure in the system. That everyone deserves coaching and feedback, and we're going to be giving that regularly to our staff members. So you can see the data to date. KickUp is the system that houses that information, and we were just under 2,000 feedback and observations as of December 8th. There's a follow-up process that our leaders are walking through right now in which they are thinking critically about teacher effectiveness on their campus. And that work is being done between our leaders and executive directors right now in the month of December. They're about to actually close that process up. And then we will be talking one-on-one with principals in January about teaching and learning that's occurring in classrooms across the district. And really saying, we know the driver to student achievement is the teacher in the classroom and their effectiveness, and that they are resourced and developed to do the good work. And so what are our obligations to provide that, and what are principals' obligations to give the feedback that's necessary to help them grow? And so that's a process we're walking through with more intention than we have in the past this year. Launching forward into work that is forthcoming, we have our data and dessert that actually starts tomorrow. So we have 4 offerings of that where we will pull down our middle of the year data for Galileo. Again, that is our local internal assessment that gives us rich data about how our year is going thus far with relationships to the expectations around mastery of standards per grade level. So we are going to analyze those reports with leaders and a small team that they'll be bringing with them. We are going to use that also as an opportunity to refine those reading success plans that Dr. Majors talked about. That is a requirement of the state. And then we are going to give them tools to activate and turn that information to have conversations in their PLTs on campus. So those are coming as we close out December and then right as leaders come back in January. So they're set up with data in hand to help move metrics as soon as we start the third quarter. And last but not least, I want to just leave the board with a reminder about our assessment timeline. So this is not unfamiliar to you, but I just want you to know where we are in the process. So we review our building school improvement plans quarterly with our leaders, and we go over and talk with them about where they are in meeting those plans and what action steps or supports they need for implementation on their campus. So that will begin in January as leaders come back. We talked already about the middle of year data protocol to analyze and shift instruction. That will also include leaders talking with buildings about their building level APR, because it's one thing for our campuses to know district APR, but it's quite another for them to know how they're moving students according to the state metrics on their own campuses. We are also going to continue with those intensive supports for comprehensive and 5% schools, using our DCAs as an ongoing basis. We will be administering third quarter Galileo interim assessments. Again, we've already seen the predictability of Galileo to tell us how we will perform on the map. So it behooves us to give those interim assessments so we can get a predictor of how our students will perform and fill any necessary gaps ahead of state assessment. And then, of course, we'll launch our end-of-year assessments both for Galileo and the state as we walk into April and May. So that's just where we're headed. And I'll just draw your attention to this final quote on the screen before I thank you for the time. This work is hard. It is hard. It is hard for teachers. It's hard for leaders. It's hard for district departments and teams. The EDs would tell you that it's hard. ELT would tell you that it's hard. But I stand here in full belief that it is the right work because it builds efficacy for our team around understanding their standards. We've developed systems to assess ongoing so that people know where students are performing. We're aligning that to rich instructional practices. You've heard it, you know what they are. And we are intervening and extending as a part of Tier 1 instruction. That is what leads to consistent improvement. So with that, 9:09, I don't know if Dr. Latham was timing me. I'll say thank you for the opportunity to stand here, to serve the system, and to report on the good work of all of those that sit behind me and those that sit on campuses.
All right, thank you, Dr. Holt, and for all the great presentations. Much appreciated, great work. And want to go around the table here and see if there are any questions. Judy, you have anything? Or Board Member Bruner?
It's okay. I've been called a lot of things over the years. I don't necessarily have any questions, but I have a lot of kudos out there. Congratulations on the overall improvement in terms of our score to 75.5. Hey, steps. We're moving in the right direction, and that's what we want to see. The graduation rate, having worked that, oh my gosh, is what I'm going to say to that. You've got some people out there. Well, first of all, the graduation rate is reflective of what comes before.
That's correct.
But I also can attest from a firsthand basis of how that's being done in terms of focus and literally going out to homes and making home visits and getting kids back into the building, offering them alternative paths to commencement, to graduation with a high school diploma. And a lot of times it's coming from students that didn't do well on an EOC, and then they disappeared on us, and we went back out, or the principals went back out and found them. So it's a lot of hard work, and it's absolutely worth it. I did see in the news in the last day or two, and I can't remember the district, if there was more than one district quoted or not, but are there some that you're aware of, or you, Dr. Latham, where there are some districts that are questioning how the scores were calculated and looking to see if that's been done accurately related to DESE? I know I saw something about that in the news. Does this sound familiar to anyone?
So I would say the most concerning part probably to districts, and we just had a regional meeting about that a week ago, is how growth is calculated. So, and the potential volatility of how growth is calculated and the impact that that might have on school districts and accreditation. And I'm not going to say probably anything else about that, but I can send you, Bruce and I can send you a whole presentation about that alone. But I think that is probably, when I think about our regional counterparts, what is most concerning right now is the calculation of growth.
Okay. The work is being done. Good work is being done. And I thank the three principals for being here. Dr. Holt is used to getting up and talking to the board. You three, it's a little different. And Dr. Powers, I just want to know who it was that hired you years ago. I just don't know. Anyway, she was sitting in my class at Missouri State University. I thought, you need to come work for Springfield. And so here we see the
rest is history.
The outstanding educator she is today. So at any rate, thank you all very, very much for all that you're doing out in the buildings. Thank you for putting it together and giving us really some information we can kind of sink our teeth into. I don't think anybody sitting up here doesn't see that there's more work to be done. You acknowledge that more than anyone. Yes. And but I think we're on the right track. And so I'm feeling good about this. I am. We're not where we need to be.
Nope.
We're not. but we're making some strides, and I think we should not diminish that in any way. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
All right, any other board comments? Kelly, have anything? Or Board Member Kelly?
I'll just say real quick, thank you for putting together data specifically about the MAP scores and not just the APR, if I'm saying that right.
You are.
I think that's very useful, and I think it's very honest in us to be public about that self-assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Thomas Tate?
I was going to let Miriam go next.
Sure?
Yes.
What if I go over 10 minutes?
Then that's why I want you to go first, so that I can.
No, you go first.
Oh, go ahead.
She likes to go last so that she can have the
Connie.
last word and the longest word. So I just want to say that I appreciate the work that you and your team have done. This is definitely difficult work. There's been a lot of challenges with regards to how we understand standardized testing and what it means to get certain scores. Over time, we've seen shifts in a higher focus on assessment. So we give more weight to these assessments. And we also have been limiting some of our learning outcomes because we're so focused on testing. So there's been a lot of priority shifts. So I like the fact that the new MSIP does include measures of growth, because that's really important with regards to student learning. You know, if we think about the normal curve, the normal distribution, not every student is going to be shifted on the +1, +2 standard deviations above the mean. So we have to expect that not all students are going to master all of the content. However, we would like the majority of our students to master the content.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times many of us don't fully understand what those test scores mean and how hard it is to try to move the needle. So measuring growth is important, and I'm glad that the new MSIP does measure growth, because that's important. I know there's some things, some kinks that need to be worked out, but it's good stuff. I also wanted to say that I appreciate the work of the executive directors and the coaching. I know that it was one of the initiatives that Dr. Latham put forward that not everybody wanted to get on board with, but I do believe that it is important work as we, like the word that you use often, is calibrate the work that's being done in the classroom and making sure that we're all on the same page. What I've seen from my experience going around to these schools is that when the leadership is feeling very confident and supported, then their teachers feel confident and supported, and it trickles down. And so I love the work of the executive directors and the coaches that I'm seeing done, and I do think it's moving the needle forward.
Thank you.
All right. Very good.
I agree. We've shifted to focusing too much on the test. Okay, well, first, I just have a few comments for the principals who took time out of their evening to come in case they want to leave and not listen to the rest. I don't really know what to say other than I can't tell you how invigorating it is to hear that it is possible. If you don't believe it, you'll never achieve it. I mean, we say that to the kids all the time, right? And I also can't tell you how invigorating it is to hear you say the word urgency and to feel that urgency here tonight. So thank you. And Dr. Holt, thank you for emphasizing the talk and the work that is going into supporting our number one asset, which is indeed our human capital, our teachers, right? That's okay. Now on to the things I am disappointed in. I am really disappointed in how late DESE delivered yet again. So they moved it from March. This doesn't help. So did I hear you right? The principals are just now going to be sharing this with their staff?
Yeah, so I think our principals have shared parts and pieces of this, knowing the whole time that data is preliminary, right? Movement in what the data looks like is very small, especially at a building district. We gain some more points as we move through the process.
So they didn't get this information in time to have an impact in the first semester?
They have seen
They
it.
have? Oh, okay, okay.
But the formality of it now and it being official, we share again because of wanting them to know exactly where they fell on their APR.
Okay,
so they've had access to their map data, and Dana can speak to this just because I was in one of her PLTs the other day, but they have in one of our platforms the ability, right, to compare their Galileo assessment to the map data, knowing the whole time that it's preliminary. But knowing, here's what we think Carver kids did last year, here's how they're coming in, and we already look at that
So
data.
before the school year started,
yep,
our staff did have access to this?
Correct.
Okay,
It's a
okay, so
preliminary data.
maybe I won't poo-poo Desi quite so much.
Well, I mean, we like it to be official, right?
Okay, all right. And then I do have just a few questions. So on the ICAP, that's the individual career and academic plan points.
Yep.
How are we capturing those points? Like,
yep.
What is that requirement? How does that work?
So it's the plan of study for students through coursework. It's about achieving their personal career goals. So think about the platform Dr. Latham brought on when she came, which was Naviance, which helps with that work.
Okay.
But this points are awarded based on the percent of completion by 8th grade students. So how many 8th grade students have an ICAP plan in place? So that's how we're awarded points. So again,
we
these
have 8th grade students, like, is it at the end of 8th grade?
Yeah, we just did it.
Okay, so
You
first
just updated, yes.
So, sorry, I'm just writing this down. So
it's essentially their
8th
planning
graders
of,
by
like-
the end of first semester, is that just means that they've met with a counselor, there's something happening with the parent?
High school counselors.
High school counselor without parent, is there a guardian?
Yep.
Our high school counselors come over with our regular counselors, and they were just last Thursday and Friday.
Say that again.
Just last Thursday and Friday, our 8th graders met with some high school counselors and our counselors and developed a plan. They're really looking at requirements of what do you need to graduate. You can't take all Walking 101, don't tell Brad Rummel, but you can't take Walking 101.
He's not even here to defend himself anymore.
Every class for 4 years, because you're not going to meet your requirements. So it's really looking at those requirements, making a plan.
Plan in place.
A tentative plan.
Okay, so we're not asking our 8th graders to decide what they're going to be when they grow up. No. Okay,
And then we do scheduling next week. I'll just take over.
I mean, they can talk about that, but.
We do scheduling next week, and that will go home to parents. Every single parent at
that's what I
Carver
was-
will
okay.
get information.
But to
no
get
matter
the
what grade.
credit for the state, it's making sure that our 8th graders have that.
Every 8th grader
Okay,
have one.
got
Check,
it.
check, check. So these should be, right, if you're thinking about easy points versus more difficult points, this should be an easy point get.
So then, and if you want to do this with me later, I totally understand. So so MSIP 6 gives you 70-30.
Yep.
70% for performance and 30% for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I think was mistaken. I thought, because now I'm looking at, if you can put up number 11.
Yep.
I have questions about 10, 11. 10, 11, yeah, and 12.
Give me a second. It's a lot of slides.
So I thought, so when you look at 11, it has, we'll take ELA, where the students are right now, and then a little bit further down, it has growth. See, I thought that was.
Where are you? Tell me I'm sorry.
Number 11.
This
Yeah.
is slide 11.
So you see,
Yep.
we're getting 12 points, just top line.
Yep.
For English language arts for all students, and then the student group, 6 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Possible points. And then you kind of come down after you go through ELA, math, science, social studies, ELA comes back. Here it's growth.
Correct.
I thought that this was the growth that was going to count for 30%. But when I'm crunching the numbers, this is still as part of our performance.
Correct. This whole
thing.
front
So
page right here is
I feel like
performance.
Desi sold it a little, not quite. I think it was intellectually dishonest the way it was presented to me as a board member. So now we go to
The next
the
slide.
the next. And I'm sitting here, I was doing mental math, and I caught something. So these points here, these 52 points out of a total of 192 is the 30%, right?
Correct.
Okay. Except it's actually 54 points. I had to check, because when I added it up, it came out. So we got to crunch these numbers again, because the points we earned for the performance is actually 95, not 97. But then the number of points we got on continuous improvement is actually 50, not 48. So one goes down by 2, one goes up by 2. But then the points possible on continuous improvement is 54. Anyway, we got to look at that again.
Yeah,
Because I don't know.
just snipped from our DESI performance
Yeah, so
card,
Desi made
so-
a mistake. So that 75.5 is
Bruce
just
will-
a
Bruce will be
smidgen
on it.
lower. Okay, yeah. So who's going to be on it?
Bruce.
Bruce, can you send the updated to us? Because these numbers don't add up.
So DESI has actually said they will not be updating the official APRs that come out.
Okay.
But I will get you an explanation on it.
Yeah, okay, if you could. All right, and then just a couple more questions. So yeah, I was hoping to get more of a bump from our continuous improvement where the students improve, but I see that that's not where it came from. All right. So questions. Thank you for giving us where we rank with some of the districts that are similar in size and.
Yep.
But can we also get, I don't expect you to give it to me right now, but maybe you know it. I'd like to know where we rank in the state. I also want to know where we rank in the region. That is important. And I also want to know, where are we in terms of our per student spending? Because I saw this in DESI, not for this year, but for past, and I've seen the number being thrown around, mostly by school board members and other districts were like, well, we spend blah, blah, blah for, okay, great. And I'm specifically interested regionally in that one and not compared to Kansas City because, you know, cost of living, not cost of living, but teachers get paid more in Kansas, in urban districts. That's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit more regional, except that doesn't quite work as well because we are bigger and.
Yeah, we look different.
But I would appreciate that in terms of what we're spending per student.
Okay.
Did I get that all questioned? So where do we rank in the state? Where do we rank regionally?
And the percent
Where
spent
we
per
are in
student.
terms of that? And then can we look at the numbers because they're not adding up the way I'm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I got it done in less than 10 minutes. Woo! Talk real fast, except I didn't turn blue in the face like I did the last time.
All right. I do want to say, Board Member Bruner, thank you for recognizing and hiring, Dr. Powers.
Dana Powers.
Great. Yeah, you made a, you evaluated her well. Right. All right. Well, and I do appreciate you talking about your agility and flexibility to stop, because how can they move on if they don't know it? And I just didn't understand that when I think I heard that before. So anyway, thank you for that and explaining that. A couple of questions here. Let me see. This is slide 41.
Okay. There you go. That's Carver's.
What's the mean proficiency scales to support student agency?
Oh, not 41. Hang on.
No, 40, I'm sorry, 41.
That's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Number 3 there.
So, so that is really the work that's birthed out of some of the work we're doing with Marzano. And it's about creating scales for our teachers to know here is how a student scores in relationship to a certain standard, and the scale gives us those steps of where they might be and what to do next. So it's how they calibrate when they're scoring students in relationship to a standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's a conversation that we're really beginning with our teachers, right? We have to start with identifying the essentials, assessing the essentials, and then now we're working on proficiency scales, which is kind of the trajectory that you would follow.
Yeah, to get to proficient.
Yep.
Right. Okay. All right. And then going to, you had this guy come in, Dr. John Hennigan. You came up with evaluate current system supports for behavioral and plan-specific, site-specific next steps. Did anybody look at, are there any common next steps here? And are any lesson learned that we could take out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we as executive directors, after attending that training and hearing feedback from our building leaders about what were the key things that they took away from that specific training, that helps us to know what are the in-time supports that we can provide ahead of him coming back again in April, and really giving us the opportunity to assess how our implementation has gone. So that was really the goal of bringing him in. He's been a principal in a turnaround school. He's worked worked utilizing the system of RTI for behavior, and so he held a lot of credibility. And while these are many things that we've all been saying, we all know that sometimes the expert voice speaks a little bit louder and gives the practicality to the work that you need. And so that we wanted to honor that and offer that for our leaders.
Great. Okay. Excellent. I think that's a great practice. So, with that being said, I think we'll move on. Thank you so much for your time. This is a great presentation. Everybody, all the work that went into this, we really appreciate it.
Amy. Oh, might be.
So the next step
Boom, got it.
is 11.01, superintendent update. Right? Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
So
Waiting
just
all night.
a thank you. You have been waiting all night. Thank you to board members. Thank you for reviewing the presentations that we send to you. It's so important that you have received the information in advance, but just thank you for reviewing it and being prepared with your questions. And again, as Travis said earlier, thank you for coming in on last week so we could just share some things with you. As we close out 2023, 3 years later, I still receive questions of what do you like about Springfield? What do you like about SPS? And the holidays can be a trigger for people. Oftentimes we focus on those that are not here in our lives, personally and professionally. And so I thought today I would actually just share some things as we close out the year that I'm thankful for and celebrate some things in 2023 as it relates to Springfield and Springfield Public Schools. And I'm doing it kind of like Jim Fallon does it, and I'm falling asleep when he's trying to pretend I'm writing, although I've already kind of written them out, okay? So number one, I'm thankful for the community supporting our request for a $220 million bond. I'm very thankful to our community. And just a reminder, the security upgrades have started. Phase 1 will be finished by January. To our staff and community and board for supporting a new strategic plan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Celebrating again, you've heard it, and we're going to, because we don't brag on ourselves enough, celebrating that we had the largest number of graduates, over 1,800 graduates this year in May. And also the highest graduation rate 4 years in a row, but at 96.5%. Celebrating our annual performance report score, that we are making those steps and we are making the gains. Thankful to our staff for our Pay It Forward campaign. Over $51,000 was contributed this year by our staff to United Way of the Ozarks and Foundation for Springfield Public Schools. I'm very thankful to the Alliance for Healthcare Education that will change and improves everyone in this community's access to healthcare workers in the future. So very thankful for that partnership. I'm also thankful for the support of our attendance initiative for 23-24. Currently, our district attendance is 92.5%, which is an increase of over 1.03% from this time last year. Just a special recognition to McGregor Elementary School. They had the greatest improvement with an increase of 4.33%. And I didn't even know Rebecca was going to be here tonight, the principal, Rebecca Curry, compared to this time last year, so a 4.33%. I'm also thankful for our business leaders that participated in Principal for a Day, that event this past October. Excited to talk about it and maybe to do another one in the spring. And I'm also thankful that I live in a community that is very collaborative, that we continue to find ways to address our community issues and concerns, but also the public schools concerns. And then finally, number 10 is I appreciate the attention and focus that our principals and teachers have placed on addressing learning loss and discipline issues as a result of COVID and societal issues. I think we know COVID added to it, and you saw as Misty shared from Roundtree what happened from 2019 to 2023 as it relates to that. You saw that dip from about 58% down, and then they're back up. With that focus, though, also comes with reality that many of our students are arriving in our buildings and classrooms with more challenges, including academic and behavioral challenges. I'd like to thank our principals and teachers for recognizing this and working on solutions to address these issues, as you've heard from some of our principals tonight. As I think about what it will take to fulfill our mission of being a district of choice, back to our strategic plan, I'm reminded that it will take all of us, board members, Even if it's 10, 15-minute long speeches, I'll take it. Parents, teachers, principals, and the community working together to make sure we have a positive learning environment for all of our students. Springfield is a collaborative community, and I'm confident that together we can positively address the issues that our staff and students face on a daily basis. Once again, to our principals and teachers, thank you for supporting our students. I wish everyone a restful and peaceful holiday break. Text me in the new year. Hint, hint.
Hold on, I'm texting her. I have a comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. I think that this is one of the best meetings we've had. And I am so sorry that Mr. McCoskey wasn't here tonight because he would have loved it. We talked about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. We stayed in those 4 walls, Steve. I just really wish he was here and,
Yep, you're
right? And he will be in my prayers that he has a speedy recovery. I'm very grateful that this board had just such a great, I feel, healthy discussion about so many topics that are what I think of as a school board meeting, and that revolves around, I had to, as we did it, knocked them out of the park, curriculum, we talked about achievements, we talked about what we're doing and what we still need to do to support our teachers. And we even touched on discipline in a roundabout way, Mr. Byrne. And then we focused a lot on urgency, the urgency and the passion, and just, I feel overwhelmed, like I want to cry. This was so awesome. And this was a really great year to finish the year on. I mean, I really, I'm like at a loss for words. And I just hope that as we move forward, we could do some more of this. And that we show more grace to the occasional board member who may go on for 15 minutes every 3 or 4 months, because it really helps us be more effective. And I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have some things to say. As we end this year, I think it's imperative to address the challenges our teachers encounter in managing student behavior within our educational institutions. These issues extend beyond our local perspective and echo a nationwide concern that warrants our collective attention and strategic action. I support initiatives that are aimed at enhancing our educational landscape, particularly in addressing the complexities of student behavior. Things like social emotional learning and positive behavioral intervention supports are not mere theoretical frameworks. They are potent tools with the potential to transform student behavior positively. Research demonstrates that these programs, when effectively implemented, contribute significantly to fostering self-regulation and instigating lasting behavioral changes among students. It's crucial to dispel the notion that there are no consequences for undesirable behavior. While suspension remains a part of our disciplinary protocol, I firmly believe that they should not be the sole recourse. Instead, they are one of several tools in our arsenal, but not the panacea for behavioral issues. Suspensions do not inherently modify student behavior. They merely offer a temporary respite. It is through the implementation of programs such as PBIS that we cultivate an environment that fosters sustainable behavioral transformation. I'm acutely aware of the concerns expressed by our dedicated teachers regarding their safety. It is incumbent upon us to create and sustain safe learning environments conducive to growth and development. Fortunately, several schools within our district are witnessing remarkable transformations, and I visited one the other day. It was Pipkin, and they're seeing transformations in school culture and student behavior through judicious implementation of district-wide behavior programs like PBIS and SEL. What emerges as pivotal in this transformative process is multifaceted. What I've seen is unwavering commitment and endorsement from building administrators, continual training and support mechanisms for our valued teachers and staff, the establishment of clear and consistent rules, processes, and procedures, and above all, a collective positive outlook that's infused with the belief that change is achievable and improvement is within our grasp. As we end this year, I call upon all of us to embrace these evidence-based strategies as we endeavor to cultivate an environment that not only addresses behavioral changes, but also propels our students toward a future that is saturated with promise and success. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly?
Merry Christmas.
I do have a
Board
few
Member
things
Berger.
to say. Thank you. Well, I always give some thought to the board comments section and write my notes down really days in advance, trying to remember all that I want to say. And I oftentimes speak spontaneously, but from some notes. But for tonight's comment, I took the time to write something down, and I want to stick very closely to the script. So please bear with me while I read to you. I would like to take a few minutes this evening to thank the principals and teachers that allowed me to visit their campuses and classrooms last week. I had the privilege, the true privilege, of going to Campbell Early Childhood Center, the Wolf program located at Bass Pro, Weller, Field, Harrison, Cowden, Pleasant View, and Watkins. As is often the case, my encounters with staff were enlightening, educational, and inspirational. During these visits, I inquired about two primary topics. I asked principals to tell me what they were proudest of this year, and then I asked for their input related to discipline. Principals had lots to share about good things on their campuses, and they did not shy away from the conversation about student behavior. Because of recent comments and concerns expressed to the board on the topic of discipline, I offer the following. My professional position has been and continues to be, students need to be held accountable for their behaviors. Now, the tricky part is, what exactly does accountability look like? Is it a teacher-student conference? Is it a principal-student conference? Is it a parent phone call? Is it a timeout? Is it a trip to the counselor? Is it time in a focus room? Is it after-school detention? Is it in-school suspension? Is it out-of-school suspension? Well, that depends on the specific circumstances surrounding the event. What I know from years of experience as a classroom teacher and school principal is that no pancake is so flat that it doesn't have two sides. Most school staff agree student behavior is often impacted by changing weather conditions, situations outside of school, and the season of the year. As part of a student's due process, principals are required to explain to the students specifics about the complaint, and then students are given the opportunity to respond verbally or in writing to the allegations. It is only after that point that principals are expected to make the sometimes very difficult decision related to consequences. What I know with certainty is, number one, student behavior has been an issue for as long as I can remember. Number two, some behaviors have been more extreme since returning to campus after the pandemic. Number three, staff and parents are frustrated, which is understandable and not surprising. Number four, the district, including Dr. Lathan and this board, are all dedicated and focused on resolving the issues in a manner that is legal, practical, and effective. Number five, President Kincaid, Vice President Kreis, and I met this fall with union leadership at the SNEA office. The topics discussed were communication and discipline. We were committed then, as well as now, to listening closely to all concerns. To date, The district, under the leadership of Dr. Lathan, has invested significant financial resources accompanied by targeted professional development designed to address the needs of our school community. As I stated in an open board meeting a few months ago, there will be no quick fix to this. We must acknowledge the problem, listen to all constituents with an empathetic ear, collaborate, and offer solutions, all while recognizing that there is more than one way to work the problem, as we used to say at Central High School. Make no mistake, we are in this together. It is as simple and as complicated as that. It is a privilege to serve our community on this school board. Thank you all for considering my point of view.
All right. Well, I want to say I'm thankful for Dr. Lathan, for you and your staff, for all you do for Springfield, for all you do for the Springfield Public Schools, teachers, and students. I really appreciate that. And to all the teachers, aides, paras, nurses, thank you for all you do. The counselors, the drivers, the custodial staff who's I don't know where we'd be without them. They're so popular and so good for the schools and good for the students. The kitchen staff who's going to get up in a few hours here. Again, and the police officers who keep us safe. We appreciate that. The school staff, the principals, assistant principals, the office bosses, I would say, the administrative assistant at each school who run the schools, and everybody. I'm sure I missed some, and the board members around this table, and the community. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for your support, and I want to say Happy Christmas and holidays to all. To all, a good night.
I move to adjourn. I move to adjourn.
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay.
If somebody hasn't.
Oh, done. We're done. We have to vote with 5? Okay, we still have to vote. All right. Second. Okay, and now.
I mean, you can take it, but I feel that I didn't have to go start to take showers.
Get the vote.
Cool.
Never came up.
I don't know.